am I working for my business or is my business working for me? I thought as a business owner, you can do whatever you want. I'm like, damn.
We were told, hey, don't worry about student loans. You'll make it up over time. And it was a fucking lie.
They get a lot of fulfillment out of running their business, but it's not particularly enjoyable.
Go all in. One thing. Zero or nothing. And I've never agreed with that.
Tim Ferriss says batching is good. So I was like, all right, batch all these videos. And I looked at my calendar and it just filled me with dread.
Money is the new meaning? Absolutely not.
I can, in fact, do whatever I want. If you ever get a sense that what you're doing is draining your energy, that will negatively compound over the long term. The most purposeful thing I ever did in my life.
I'm Codie Sanchez, and this is the Big Deal podcast for those who don't just want to be rich, but be free and are actually willing to do the things that it takes to get there. I run a portfolio of boring businesses that do 9 figures and a media company called Contrarian Thinking. Okay, this week, I am going deep into one thing, which is, should you tell your boss to pound sand and quit the job you hate, or should you keep doing it and why? I think you're going to like this episode. We got both sides of the equation hammering out their opinions on it. There's not just one right answer, but we're going to give you the answer we think by the end of this podcast. Contrarian idea. Let's start with an idea you might hate. What's our idea this week, Rachel?
So you tweeted that college is overrated and overpriced. It costs $24,000 to graduate from Harvard, and it costs $0 to learn. Marketing on YouTube, finance reports and breakdowns on Twitter, stock analysis via newsletters, expert experience on podcasts. Let the sheep pay $250,000 while we earn. And I will say I loved college. I thought it was worth every penny. I did go on the GI Bill, so I didn't pay. However, I had a great time.
Every penny of
every
zero
penny.
pennies.
Every penny of $0 was worth my time. It was great. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts. First off, when you are saying this, are you talking about like an MBA? Are you talking about undergrad? I did not get my MBA from Penn State. I just got my undergrad degree.
I'm talking about undergrad degrees. This is actually the numbers that it would cost for somebody to go to Harvard for a 4-year undergrad degree. And I mean, the triggering words, let the sheep pay $240K. Everybody says you go to school, why? For the network. They actually are pretty convinced these days that people don't go to school for the education that you get anymore. That it's sort of like a fancy version of finishing school, basically. And then you meet a bunch of other people, and hopefully one of those people knows a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who gets you a job. And that job is higher paying than other people because your college was better than theirs. And so I think there's a couple things happening right now. One, I think jobs are just more valuable MBAs that pay you. And the real question you have to ask yourself is, where could I get $240,000 worth of value, or how could I learn $240,000 worth instead of having to pay for it? I personally made millions before I ever even went to, go work for myself. This was all me working for somebody else for many, many years. And I think actually a lot of people don't get that right. And so we were thinking about it today. And, I feel like we've sort of started to shit on the idea of having a job is a bad thing. And, you can't be the owner of your future if you work for somebody else. And being a founder is some sort of founder porn that everybody needs to have. And I actually don't think that's the case. But let's maybe answer a few questions from people, because I know we had some questions on, should you go get your MBA? Should you go work for yourself, or should you go work for somebody else? Were there any that you thought we should answer?
There was one, I believe it was over on your Instagram, and it was from somebody named Yan. And he said, "Hey, Cody, I'm a final year economics student with a pretty good knowledge on finance and accounting. What do you recommend to do? Focusing on internship programs to get a real job experience in finance like banking, or studying for a CCA and CFA exams to make my future path better. Or maybe focusing on grades for a master degree. So what do you think, Cody? Also, I want to be a billionaire. You gave me an inspiration on YouTube. Don't ignore my comment, please, Cody."
All right. I'll ignore the demand on YouTube. I appreciate you guys following. If you don't follow us on YouTube, you should. Actually, that channel's sick. We put a bunch of time into those videos. All right. First, let's look at college. So should you go get an MBA, or really even go to college these days? I thought this graph was fascinating. Basically, this is called the relative value of higher education. And what you see here, fancy words, but the diminishing financial return of higher education. What that means, you see a blue line that's kind of skyrocketing up since, when is this? 64. And a red line that's staying sort of static. The blue line has the costs for higher education going up to $95,000 or above, or if you're at Harvard, multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then the red line is the amount that people earn after getting their bachelor's degree from a higher education institute. And that red line has stayed from, let's call it 35,000 to about 45,000. So we've had astronomical growth in the cost of higher education and flatlining growth in the return of higher education. So if you take all of the emotional aspects out of it and the fact that it's super fun to party with your friends and do keg stands on the weekends, what you realize is that the numbers don't lie. The numbers tell you that over time, college has become less valuable if what you care about is making more money after school, which is what they say college will help you do. And so if you want to go to college just to have fun, that's awesome. But realize that college doesn't seem to actually increase your earnings potential over time. In fact, if you look at the numbers, you see a bunch of trade school graduates earning more than graduates from undergrad colleges in general. And I can say this firsthand. We have plumbing companies and landscaping companies and boring blue collar service businesses where the guys make way more than the average marketing degree. And so I think we were lied to as a generation. I think this generation feels it. We were told, hey, just get good grades, get into a good college. Don't worry about student loans. You'll make it up over time. Then go get a good job and you're going to be okay. And it was a fucking lie. And the truth of the matter is that we should have looked at the numbers. And the numbers say that we are making other people rich, namely institutions and their investors. And we are by no means better off as a generation from having the highest level of student debt of all time and the highest level of education of all time. And increasingly, higher education does not now always lead to higher income. So let me tell you what I really think about it. That's what I really think about it. I do think we could have a whole segment on here if you guys want to give us some comments in the reviews. I read every single one of them and tell us if you want to see, should I get an MBA versus should I not? Should I go to college versus should I not? We could have two people fight with their ideas on that. Okay, now let's get to the next part. So basically, rule number one, I don't think you should go to MBA unless you got a GI Bill like Rachel, or unless you were like me, where my company paid for it. Shout out State Street at the time. I wouldn't go do it. I did not have to pay for my really fancy degree, and that's the only reason I did it. Now, do you quit your job? So let's say you say, okay, I'm in undergrad. Do I say, fuck the part-time job and I'm going to quit it and I'm going to go and do something else? Well, there's actually a really fascinating study here that we found the other day that basically tracks like 5,000 individuals who either stayed or left their job while doing a startup and said, which ones succeed more? The people who stay at the company while they build their next thing, or the people who leave the company and go build their next thing 100% of the time? Now, my gut originally might say, and many people say on Twitter, go all in, one thing, zero or nothing. Sleep on the couch if you have to. And I've never agreed with that. I have always started my own thing while I've been at a corporate job, not a startup. Startups are hard. We can get to that later. But the numbers tell us that you are more likely to succeed by 33% if you stay at your job and build your side thing than if you just go and build your side thing. Because that income is lifeblood, and the thing that'll kill you more than anything else is running out of cash. I guess my last point, because he said that he wants to be a billionaire, right, was like, there's what is it, like a 0.00006% chance of building $1 billion company. It's really small. And in tandem with that, if you look at historicals, it will take you anywhere from 40 to 50 months if you're part of that 0.00006%, which means that if you have another founder that's averaging over multiple years about a couple $100,000 a year until you build this huge company and you get an exit of a couple $100 million because you're going to have to raise money on the side. Now, what's more likely than that is you actually have more like a 67% chance of absolutely losing everything, every single dollar, it not working whatsoever. That's just what the math says. And so if the only reason why you want to build $1 billion company is for cash, or you want to go do a startup is for cash, I think you're nuts, because most people fail. And that is not the easiest way to win, despite what you see all over the internet. In fact, my dad has this line that I thought was so good, which is, you're not really in the game if you haven't sat with your head in your hands in the dark, in your living room, unsure about what to do next. That's the game of entrepreneurship. It is a game of uncertainty, missed payroll, people suing you, people hating your product, employees leaving you, you having fraud committed against you, people stealing from you. it's a miserable sport that some masochists like myself just can't stop doing it. And so you have to make sure you actually want to be in the game. There's huge benefits, a massive upside, but only after it has taken its piece of skin, and its piece of skin is really, really big. So make sure you actually want to do the thing. Because I think we were going to talk, Rachel, about sort of one of my pet peeves for people who talk some talk they shouldn't, right?
Somebody did send you a message, and it was kind of interesting. So they said, we're love to invite you to our exclusive workshop for founders on how to scale their startups to $1 billion plus with remote talent and VAs from emerging countries. So there was a lot of interesting things that I know happened after this. Can you break that down and explain it for us?
Yeah. So I won't shout out the company too much because, doxing. But basically, this company is saying, hey, here's how to grow $1 billion using virtual assistants. No surprise. What do you think they do? Obviously, they sell virtual assisting services. Tiny little hiccup. I checked just for shits and giggles because I thought, has somebody actually built $1 billion company using remote work? It's like one of the key figures. I looked at the company. Of course, nobody's there has actually done that. Then they highlight this other startup that is not nothing. It's worth $50 million, but $50 million is categorically not $1 billion. And what I realize is how many people talk about the thing that they haven't actually done. And it's a perfect example of why I think people say, I want to be a billionaire. When you understand mathematically the incredibly low likelihood that any of us, myself included, have of being a billionaire, you can actually understand the game that you're playing. And it's sort of, in my opinion, like setting yourself up for failure in the beginning when you say that the only thing that I want to do is build $1 billion company. You need to ask yourself, why? Is that reasonable? And what is it actually going to take to do it? Most people fuck up their lives and don't achieve what they want because they write big goals and they don't say what they're willing to sacrifice to get those goals. The difference between somebody who hits goals and somebody who doesn't hit goals is that they sacrifice to hit them, whereas most people manifest and mirror talk and project into the universe the nonsense that they want out of life. And the universe only really cares about what you're willing to give it in return with what it will give you back. So sacrifice is actually the entire name of the game. And I think, we were talking about this idea about should you work miserable jobs or not? And I believe actually that if you want to make more money, you have to expect many years of doing the things you hate before you get to the years of doing the things that you love. I read this article that was 9 out of 10 people are willing to take less money for more meaning and work. And originally I was like, that's good. That's great. And then I realized, but does meaning just mean to them that they want to do something that they like all the time? I think that's what that actually means to most people. It's not that they're willing to do something really hard to earn and make more and be compensated more for the time that they spend on a subject. It's that they're searching for this touchy-feely meaning thing when it really just means their ability to tolerate pain. And HBR, I think, said that money is the new meaning. Absolutely not. I wish that was the case. I wish that most of our generation did the thing because they felt like that is what they should spend their life in pursuit of. But I don't think we're a generation of Mother Teresa's. I think we're a generation that wants to take a little bit less pain because we came out of the 2008 financial crisis. We have social media in our ear nonstop. We feel more distracted and distraught than ever. And we don't want to buckle down and do the short-term work that leads to the long-term gains. And that, I think, is a tragedy. There's, I think it was an article that we were looking at that broke down a couple of different jobs. So the data says that, we can link this in the show notes too, so you know what it is, that 62% of high-earning individuals work more than 50 hours a week. 62%. 35 work more than 60 hours a week, and 10% work more than 80 hours a week. If you add in a typical 1-hour commute, and a 60-hour work week translates into leaving the house at 7 a.m. and not getting home until 9 p.m. 5 days a week. Why do I say this? Because I think it's unreasonable for us to look at the stuff that we grew up on, I really respect the man a lot, but 4-hour work week, and think that we can make millions or tens of millions of dollars. That's not really very reasonable. Hard work leads to massive success. Massive success does not just come from being more effective and efficient. You have to pair the two, especially in the beginning when you don't know the difference between what you should be working on and what you are working on. They basically, this article then goes through and has a bunch of different case studies, right? Like a guy who works at a commercial bank. He works 120 hours a week, stays late at the office, but he's one of the top 6% of earners in America. And I remember that because I did that same thing at Goldman Sachs, right? Like worked nonstop. We worked for so long that one of my colleagues there at the firm, Eduardo, actually passed out one day in the middle of the street. Like not what we want to strive for anymore. And I don't think that degree is necessary, but I do think it leads you astray when people tell you that you don't have to work hard to achieve the things that you want. You absolutely will. The beautiful part is learning compounds, so that hard work that you do in the beginning will be miserable. You will be categorically miserable. It will be hard. You will want to quit. Other people will tell you you should for multiple years until at some point you start hitting a point where the work starts to flip and all of the learning you took for those years compounds into you earning. But it takes those years of pain to have that eventual gain. The last thing I think we should do here. Okay, so here's my take. If you want to make more money, work harder until you know how to work smarter, at which point you should then work harder and smarter until eventually you can just work smarter, but you can skip none of those steps. And I think you should expect some pain, but we have a friend of mine who's going to come on here. His name is Ali Abdal. He's a former doctor, super hardworking, right? YouTuber, entrepreneur, podcaster. He's had to work super hard to get where he is today, but he actually believes totally different than I do. He thinks that you do not have to work super hard to get what you want while being miserable. And he thinks that in fact, you should enjoy your work throughout your life. And I've seen it firsthand. He's like a very happy dude. And I think he does enjoy what he does for a living. And so he's going to give the contradicting opinion on what does it mean to work and have success? And do you have to be kind of miserable for a period to get it? He's going to disagree with me, basically. And like, note for the record, like this is what you should do with ideas. The whole idea of Idea Fight is I come on here and I tell you all the reasons why I think hard work actually leads to outsized success, the numbers behind it. And then somebody like Ali comes on and says, no, it doesn't. Here's the reason why, and here are the numbers behind it. And then you get to decide what's the truth between the two. That is lost in our society today, and that is what we are trying to bring back. Because Lord knows we don't need more one-sided arguments from people on the internet. It'd be kind of nice if we were okay being wrong some of the time.
And here we go.
So Ali, last time we saw each other, we were talking about struggle. And you were basically like, I don't know, do we have to struggle so hard? And you had some interesting frameworks. I wanted to dive in. What do you think? Do you think you have to struggle in business to be successful?
Yeah, this is the thing that I've been reading a lot about and trying to really understand this, because one narrative is that the whole Elon Musk says that starting a business is like chewing glass, and it's like you've got to work through this pain and this grind, and there's this period of like time where a lot of entrepreneurs would say that they get a lot of fulfillment out of running their business, but it's not particularly enjoyable. There's a lot of stuff you have to do that you don't particularly feel like. But the other side of the coin is, I used to have a normal day job. I used to work as a doctor. And I started my business as a way of getting freedom from that. I didn't want to have someone telling me what to do. I wanted to do the things I wanted to do and not the things I didn't want to do. And so for me, starting the business, the point of it was to buy my freedom from these obligations and to buy in a way, buy my freedom from the grind. I'd say struggle is kind of different to grind. It was sort of being a doctor very much felt like a grind. I think struggle can be a good thing if what comes out of it is positive. But I've been thinking a lot about how do we build businesses that also feel good, rather than build businesses where we're sort of grinding really hard for the sake of some sort of big outcome. Because generally when you speak to people with a lot of money, they're like, oh, well, it stops buying happiness beyond a certain point. If we look at regrets of the dying, they all say, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. And so a question I like to ask myself is, am I working for my business or is my business working for me? And usually the more I'm struggling, the more I'm working for my business. And the less I'm struggling and the more chill I am with it, the more my business is working for me.
Interesting. What do you think the difference in definition is between struggle and grind?
I think struggle is quite like value neutral. Like you can struggle while you're at the gym. You can struggle to make a breakthrough in your relationship, but like it's a good thing. If you're doing an ayahuasca trip, you're struggling, but it's for the sake of something valuable. Whereas grind has those connotations of meaninglessness around it, where the thing that you're struggling for is not in fact the thing you want to be struggling for. And so, parents will often say that raising kids is a struggle, but they wouldn't say raising kids is a grind. But you would say that like going to a boring corporate job is a grind rather than a struggle. So I think it's about what the end goal is and how purposeful it feels and how meaningful it feels.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. It's almost like if you think about struggle, you talked about going to the gym, you can have struggle, which creates more muscle mass over time, as opposed to a grind. If you grind away on a piece of stone, it sort of wears away. So it could also be like physically the difference between the two, something that could build as opposed to something that could wear down.
That's nice. That's
Interesting.
a good way of thinking about it.
I like that a lot. Okay, so you have felt really poignantly, I think, grind, which is med school in a lot of ways. You've also maybe felt grind that could be the content creation wheel that people don't talk about. How do you determine when you're in that phase and how do you get out of it? Because I think sometimes we get complacent and we stay in the grind.
Yeah. So for me, there's a very clear alarm bell. And that's when I look at my calendar and I get that feeling of, that feeling is the absolute early warning sign that, burnout is approaching or like it's starting to feel more like a grind and less like, a struggle for some sort of positive outcome. And so, for example, this week I was meant to be filming 15 videos for my YouTube channel because Tim Ferriss says batching is good. So I was like, all right, Tim, let's batch all these videos. And I looked at my calendar and it just filled me with dread. Whereas when I look at my calendar and see something like this, I'm like, yeah, that sounds fun. Or if I look at my calendar and see a block of time for writing or a block of time for filming that's unscheduled, I think, oh, that could be fun. So I identify that sign of like, that feeling of what's on my calendar. And now there's usually two things I can do at that point. One thing is to try and make the thing more enjoyable. That's like a big premise of my upcoming book, Feel Good Productivity. We're more productive and more creative and less stressed when we can find a way to enjoy the things that we're doing. So let's say I had to, for example, film these videos or go to work. At that point, I don't really have a choice. Like in my day job, I didn't have a choice whether I could go into work. I just had to. So at that point, I have to just try and find ways to make the process of doing it more enjoyable and energizing. But if I do have autonomy over what I'm doing, like I do now that I have a business, then I really sit down and ask myself, why am I actually doing this? Have I got that feeling about filming these videos because it's going to be struggle, it's going to be hard work for the sake of something valuable, in which case, okay, I'll push through. But do I have that feeling about filming these videos because the reason I'm doing it, the why behind it feels meaningless? And that is where I have to do a lot of journaling to be like, wait a minute, why am I doing this? What's the point? What's the goal? Is this aligned with my values? And all those sorts of questions, which really help.
Yeah, it's really important because I think forever, our first conversation, I was like, the thing is, you have to grind. Everybody struggles. I'm an investment banker. I did it for years. Like, get over yourself, basically. And I do think it's a very American way of thinking and one that I subscribed to for a long time. And I do think there's a component of it that young people benefit from. It's almost like a softening of your edges. If we go back to wearing down, it's like, you have a lot of edges when you're young and you kind of haven't been fully formed. You need to like create the David, Michelangelo creating the David out of the stone. And so you need to be sort of ground down. But at some point, when you know who you are, I think then you get stuck in mimetic desire, other people's wants and needs. How do you recalibrate when you have those moments where your calendar looks awful or you hate what you're doing? A lot of times it means you have to make a big change. Like, what do you do?
Yeah. So for me personally, I'm a business owner. And so like a big part of it is recognizing that I can in fact do whatever I want. And there's a great quote I came across the other day, which is that your life begins when you realize you can do whatever you want. And so, for example, when I see stuff on my calendar, I'll occasionally speak to a friend about this and I'll be like, yeah, the calendar's looking pretty busy. I feel pretty stressed. And they'd be a bit surprised because most of my friends are not business owners. They'd be like, wait a minute. I thought as a business owner, you can do whatever you want. And I'm like, damn, that's a good point. And it's almost like I have to remind myself or be reminded that actually the calendar is within my control. And recently I had like a family health emergency where I had to leave the country for a while. And in that context, I just canceled everything on the calendar. And everyone was cool with it, obviously. And so I was in this new country, dealing with this emergency with nothing on the calendar. And I realized, wow, if a health emergency comes up or something serious, of course I can drop everything and just do it. Similarly, my mum was involved with this emergency and she's still working as a doctor. Even she was able to drop everything because, even in the workplace, if you have an emergency come up, you can just drop everything. And that kind of made me realize, wait a minute, I've been working, I've been thinking of my business as something I have to do. And if something is in the calendar, it has to be done. But actually, shit happens in life. Your dog might get ill, a family member might get ill, you might have to do something, in which case business is way less important. So that's been a really good sense of perspective for me to realize that actually everything on the calendar is negotiable. And fundamentally, anyone can broadly do what they want, even if they're not a business owner. You just have to deal with the trade-offs that come with it.
Yeah. You have a couple ideas that I love and I want to play around with. So, I was talking with a bunch of people the other day. I did this little, psilocybin journey. We talked about it beforehand. And one of the guys who administers it basically was talking about leisure in historical context and today. And he was like, if you made it back in the day, what did you do? You became like a woman of leisure or like a man of leisure. And you basically sat around all day, did whatever you want. You did no work. And that was like a sign of status. Fast forward to today, let's call it 100 years later. The sign of status is actually, I'm so busy. I don't have time. I have so many responsibilities. So within, let's call it 1 or 2 generations, we've actually completely flipped how we even view what success looks like. And if you can completely view what success looks like in 2 lifetimes, that means it's all negotiable. And so hard for young Codie to understand, probably hard for young Ali to understand too. But now you have this framework I really liked, which is the feel-good business. And I like it for a couple of reasons. One, you're not saying it's a lifestyle business. It could be a feel-good, huge business. And it could also be a feel-good, tiny business or job. Can you kind of explain what that is versus traditional types of businesses?
Yeah. So usually in a traditional type, I guess there's sort of 3 types of businesses. There's traditional businesses, there's, let's say, a high growth startup, and then there's, shall we call it a feel-good business? A traditional business would be something like, I don't know, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, these big ass companies, big corporations, loads and loads of employees. No one really aspires to have that sort of business, at least from the people I speak to. Then we have the high growth startup, which is generally venture capital funded. The aim is growth. And so you've got to be aiming to 2x or 3x your business every year. And there's this drive for growth because you've got investors who are on the line and you don't want to let your team down. You don't want to let your investors down. And it's quite high stress. Like most people running high growth startups do not chill out. They don't have much time for leisure and contemplation. Working 80-hour weeks is seen as totally normal in those worlds. But then on the other side of the coin, you have kind of what I call a feel-good business, which is sort of like a lifestyle business, but with a few tweaks. For me, a feel-good business is a business that exists to enrich your life more so than it does to enrich the life of kind of your investors. Because in a feel-good business, generally it's bootstrapped. Generally, the founder is the 100% owner. And a feel-good business is a tool for making money, having fun, and helping people. And fundamentally, I think those three things are the reason why we do anything. We want to make money, we want to have fun, and we want to help people. It's just with a feel-good business, we are trying to keep in mind the fact that our personal fulfillment is the main thing. So for example, I've got these like 10 commandments of the feel-good business. One of them is that we look forward to Mondays. If you get to a point where you're not looking forward to a Monday, where you've got the Sunday scaries, whatever you call it, that's a sign that, hang on, maybe we need a little bit of realignment. One of the principles is that the thing that the business is doing is a thing that you find inherently enjoyable. So for example, I know, a lot of people will say, I don't care about what the business does, just that I have a business. So like I could be selling donuts or printing t-shirts or like selling B2B enterprise software. But if it's a business, that's the thing that people enjoy. But with a feel-good business, the thing you're doing actually matters. For me, I'm trying to build a feel-good business. I really enjoy making YouTube videos about educational topics. I love reading, writing, learning, and teaching. That's what I would do even if I didn't need to make money, even if I won the lottery. I've got a friend who's trying to build a feel-good business around music theory and music coaching because he just loves playing the guitar, loves playing the piano, wants to build an education business around that. So part of the feel-good business is the thing that the business is doing actually something you enjoy? And a question to figure that out is, if I won the lottery, would I continue doing this? Or would I say, screw it, and try and do something else?
Interesting. Yeah. I was talking to somebody the other day and they were saying that you can either find the joy in what you're doing, to your point, or you can find your joy. And so you kind of have like 2 options. Both can have a positive outcome with you having a joyful life, but you have to kind of be really thoughtful about which way you're going. And so I think that they feel good business is interesting because these days, most of us think about what will work, not what we want to work. Yeah. And so, especially when you're starting out, you're just like, I want a business and I want to be a CEO and I want to be a founder and I want that title. And you're not actually thinking, flash forward 5 or 10 years. Do I like the person that I see that is in my current state that I hope to be in? So that's really interesting. Another question I wanted to ask you is, when you work, do you feel like you have to have purpose beyond joy in it? Like, is joy enough of a purpose in your work?
It is for the short term, but not for the long term. So I get a lot of joy out of playing video games, for example, but it doesn't feel that like meaningful or purposeful or fulfilling, even though it's joyful. I get a lot of joy out of, I don't know, just playing squash with like some friends or something like that. And again, it doesn't feel very purposeful because I think purpose comes from working towards a goal that is sort of bigger than ourselves. The most purposeful thing I ever did in my life was I directed the pantomime that we put on in my hospital many years ago. This was like getting all the medical students together, this big ensemble production of 100 people, and we're doing this parody of Cinderella with like medical stuff and changing song lyrics to make them medical and things like that. And that was so fulfilling. And it was weird because it was taking up so much time while we were all in medical school and super busy. But it was a group of us. We were working together for this bigger cause because it was like a production we were doing together. It was for charity. And I remember being so energized by that, even though it was hard work. And I have never done anything that's been more fulfilling than that. And I think this is why people enjoy like these sorts of acting productions and musicals and things, because you're bringing people together and you're working towards a bigger goal. So when I feel joy in my work, it's when I'm with my team and it feels as if what we're doing is focused on service rather than focused on like the selfish components. I think early on in my business journey, after I read like the 4-Hour Workweek, I decided that the goal for me was financial independence. Now, as you know, once you hit financial independence, you're like, okay, well, what do I do now? Tim Ferriss calls this like the black void, the dark void of purpose when money is the target for so long. Once you hit the target, you're like, it's too easy for money to continue to be the target. But whenever I feel the most fulfilled and purposeful in my work, it's when I orient my thinking towards service. So before filming a video, there's 3 things I like to think about. And I think this actually could apply to a lot of other businesses as well. I think, it's going to sound a bit woo-woo, but mind, heart, and soul. So the heart of a video, for example, is what's the actual point? What's really the thing I'm trying to get across? What's the heart of this video? The mind behind the video is like, okay, how do I optimize title and thumbnail and structure, and how do I make it like, good from a cognitive perspective? And then soul is, how do I bring myself into this? How do I bring my own personality so that this message can resonate more authentically? And when I think about those things, it helps take my mind away from, I have to film a video to hit a sponsor deadline because it's going to make me money, and more towards, I love the idea of filming this video because I think it can genuinely add value to someone's life.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, maybe that explains why so many of your videos, even though they're hyper tactical in a world where people want to be educated, they want graphics flowing at them, they want explosions, you still have incredible views with videos that are very straightforward. They're simple. You're not running around giving people money or cars. You're actually just talking to them about the small things in life that can turn into the big things. But you do feel that when you watch that video. You feel sort of the Ali come across, I think.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Like one big thing I think about as well is, with the whole Mr. Beastification of YouTube, people explosions and stuff happening on screen. A big part of what I think about is what's the YouTube channel and what's the business I actually want to have? Do I want a YouTube channel where in order to make a video, I have to go on the street and interview people? Not really. Do I want a YouTube channel where every time I make a video, it has to be this enormous Netflix production value thing with like a script and I'm just reading from a teleprompter? Not really. The YouTube channel I want to have is a YouTube channel where I can learn something, I can maybe read a book, and I can sit down and hit record with a few notes written down and I can speak from the heart. That's the YouTube channel I want. And so the temptation is always there to be like, oh, but this video could get more views if I made more explosions happen or if I really scripted it out. But I've tried those. It's not felt good. It's not hit that whole thing of the feel-good business, feel-good productivity. And one thing that Tim Ferriss said in a recent interview, which I really loved, because he's been doing this for 15 years, he said that when it comes to this sort of creator world, if you ever get a sense that what you're doing is draining your energy, that will negatively compound over the long term and will make you absolutely miserable. And I so vibed with that because that's like the whole message behind my book as well. Try and find ways to make whatever you're doing energizing and enjoyable. And for me, it's not that energizing to add explosions on screen. It's not that energizing to be a teleprompter reader, but it's so energizing to learn something, write down a few bullet points and speak from the heart. And if that's the constraint that I create for my business and my YouTube channel, I can then optimize profit around that constraint. Whereas if what I was chasing was views, I might be like, I don't know, I just bought a private island and today we're going to blah, 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 or whatever, people try and do on YouTube for views. But the goal is not views, because views by themselves are meaningless and don't pay the bills. The goal is also not revenue or profit. The goal is maximizing profit within the constraints of the life that I want. And I was speaking to James Clear about this, the famous author of Atomic Habits. And he is somewhat like, I love speaking to people who are very, very successful and also seem very happy and sort of balanced family life and everything. And, he's got kids and he doesn't do that much stuff. His book is selling stupidly large amounts of copies. And I asked him, what has he seen? Like, who are the successful authors who are the happiest? And he said, the secret is basically draw a box around the life, around the day-to-day life that you want. And within that box, sure, maximize profit. But if anything falls outside of that box, you have to say no to the thing. So he only does like one speaking gig a month, even though he could do loads and make loads of money. He doesn't make an online course, even though he probably could. He doesn't have an app, even though he could. Because for him, the box around his life is, I want to be able to wake up when I want. I want to be able to take my kids to school. I want to have a few hours of writing. I want to pick them up from school and hang out with the family in the evening. And I love that he's defined his constraints and he's maximizing profit within those constraints.
Yeah, it's interesting. The other day, I like an exercise of writing out my perfect day. And what I realized is very small. It's tiny things. It's, a walk with a dog, like a really good cup of coffee in the morning, at least one interesting conversation, because I think a lot of times creators, you can be really individualistic just in your little hole creating, but really not more than one conversation. And so I think that's a really good exercise, sort of writing out, what does your box even look like? In investing, we have something called the deal box, which tells you what kind of businesses you want to buy. And I think it's probably the same thing for what kind of businesses you want to build. If you don't know what you're looking for, then you'll just take whatever comes your way. And so it's really smart. Okay, I have like 2 more questions for you. This sounds a little woo-woo maybe to people. Follow your energy, follow your flow, but you're also a doctor and you have a very scientific and straightforward mind. And you have a book full of not just, your feelings on this, but also some data behind it. Like, what does the world say about this? Is it true that if you follow where your energy goes, you can actually be more productive? What have you found in your studies?
Yeah, so this was a huge part of the research component of the book, trying to figure out, intuitively, I had this feeling that, when I feel good about my work, I'm kind of more productive at it. But that kind of goes against the whole discipline narrative. You got to do shit that you don't want to do even when you don't feel like it. There's that quote from Muhammad Ali where he says, I suffered every day for 10 years, but it was worth it to live life as a champion, or something like that. And I always thought of that quote and I was like, I don't want to suffer for 10 years to live life as a champion. Maybe some people do, but I feel like, in the modern world, a lot of us realize that suffering for 10 years for the sake of some outcome on the other end, you'll sort of kind of regret the 10 years of suffering. And so I went on a huge rabbit hole of research around this. And there's this researcher called Barbara Fredrickson, who in 2001 came up with this theory called the broaden and build theory. And basically the idea is that positive emotions, feeling good, ultimately drive productivity and creativity, and they reduce your stress. And the theory behind this is if we think back to caveman times, when imagine positive feelings and negative feelings. When you have negative emotions, that's like, oh shit, a tiger is about to eat me. I'm about to get ostracized from my group. Everything closes down. You become very, very focused on that threat and you can't really think outside the box. You're just focused on how the do I get away from this tiger? That's what negative emotions do to us. They spike our adrenaline and cortisol levels. They increase our heart rate, they increase our breathing rate. They have this, it's like when people get angry in a conversation with their partner, you feel that, you start seeing red and you feel that agitation. Now, if we take a breath and we think positive emotions, what do positive emotions mean? Positive emotions mean you're safe. It means you're in a connected environment. It means, you feel like you have a bit of control over what's happening in your life. And it means that you're not getting mauled by a tiger or about to get, ostracized from your group. Now, when you experience positive emotions, the mind broadens and you start being open to more possibilities. Your peripheral vision starts to become more focused. You start to then explore new areas to be like, okay, I'm feeling chill right now. Let me go explore that cave over there. I'm feeling chill right now. Let me see if I can find some seeds in that new forest over there. And so you broaden your kind of the actions that you do. And the second part is build. You build cognitive resources, you build relationships with people, you build skills, and you learn things when you're feeling good. And we find that, if they've done so many studies where you bring people into a lab, you split them into two groups, and you ask them to do the same task of creativity. And so some sort of creative task. And one group, you just give a little chocolate bar before the task, and the other group, you give nothing. Or one group, you show them a film, a sort of 10-second movie that evokes positive emotions, and the other group, you show them nothing, or you show them a sad scene. You find that the people who have been primed to feel good are more creative and more productive. And if on the studies they've done where they measure their stress levels and, heart rate and stuff, you find that they're a lot less stressed as well. So feeling good, following our energy, positive emotions, all of this stuff sounds a bit woo, but there's so much evidence showing that if we can feel good about our work, it makes us more productive, it makes us more creative, and it makes us less stressed. And it also gives us more energy, which we can then apply to the other important things in our life.
For writers and creatives, we often talk about priming, right? I know before I write, I like to go read some of the greats. I'll read Charles Bukowski, and I'll read just a few of his lines, because not only is there a positive feeling, but maybe some of that greatness rubs off on me. And it feels the same with productivity, perhaps. On our team calls, one of my big pet peeves as a leader is if people start a meeting or end a meeting, low energy. I think if you are in charge of the vibe setting of a meeting, you want to bring them in and you want to come in and be like, what are we doing today? I'm so excited you guys are here. You're spending your life with us on our mission. What a treasure. Thank you. And then at the end, this is where I think a lot of leaders really mess up, is at the end, they just go, okay, well, anything. Okay, see you guys later. As opposed to having something put aside specifically for the end that's a little bit of like a call to arms. Because people don't really remember the beginning, but they will remember the end. And if you want to be the one to prime your team to do more, then you want that to move forward. I've noticed a couple things being friends with you, that you integrate this into your life consistently. For instance, the mic check. Tell people what you do on a mic check. Does the internet know about this?
Yeah, so when I'm doing a mic check, I will either sing or I'll recite lyrics from a song. So earlier today, we were doing a mic check. I was like, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Or before I'm filming a video, I'll either play some energizing music in the background, or I'll grab the guitar, which is often next to my filming setup, and I'll just, sing Budapest by George Ezra or something like that. And my team will just be looking at me being like, yep, there he goes again. But it's a good sign because it means I'm about to film a video, and priming myself into that state of energy. People like Tony Robbins do this before they go on stage. They have a little trampoline, they jump around a bit. And for people who are, a bit cynical, mostly I speak to Brits and they're all very cynical. It's like, what is this bullshit? But actually, the state that you're in has an enormous impact on how you show up in your work and how you show up for the people around you.
Yeah. Well, you think about it this way. My husband was a Navy SEAL for many, many years, and they're huge on priming. And so before they go to war, there's a specific set of sort of things that they usually do, including usually really aggressive music that's sort of played, throughout. There's a lot of camaraderie, joking. A lot of them do a workout before they go out, because you're sort of feeling strong before you go out in sort of something that you want to be strong in. And so even those who are hyper cynical, if you can imagine that somebody who's going to war does it with the highest price, when you are doing it with your everyday, that seems to make sense. Okay. Where I want to end is, I had a tweet on the internet that people hated, which was probably in a state where I was working too much, but it was like, you don't need a hobby. You need to love what you do. And I go back and forth on this. I can't decide how I feel. Do we need hobbies? Or should we like what we do more? Should we integrate the two? What do you think? You have some hobbies, it sounds like.
Yeah, I've also flip-flopped on this, because there have been periods of my life where I've been so in the business, and the business has been so fun, and it's growing, and it's exhilarating, and it gets to 8 p.m. and I still just want to keep working because it's so enjoyable. And usually I find that when I put too much of the gas on those sorts of moments, I don't give myself enough of a time for break or rest or recharging. I'm in the process of reading a book called Rest. I can't remember the author, but he cites so many studies that show that, especially if you're in anything creative, which all business is to some degree, actually having that time for rest, having that time to allow the default mode network in the brain to activate, which is what happens when you're doing nothing, or when you're in the shower, when you're going for a walk. That's actually really important to help with creative thinking. And so I agree. It's really important to love what you do. And it's so nice that as business owners and stuff, we can do that. But increasingly, I'm finding that the value of having a hobby that does not make money. Because the problem is, like, it's so easy for us to monetize our hobbies. At one point I was having art lessons and I was thinking, oh, I can post this on Instagram. And if I can get good enough, I can illustrate children's books and I can make money out of this thing. And then I was like, yeah, but I make money way more efficiently in other methods. So why don't I just let my art or my video games or reading fiction, fantasy fiction, be a thing just for me rather than for the sake of driving the capitalist machine? So yeah, I don't know, going for a walk, going for a jog, spending time with friends, reading a book, playing video games. I love those as a way of, in a way, forcing myself to not just keep on working, because I know that over the long term, it will actually benefit my business if I'm working, let's say, 40 hours a week rather than 80 hours a week.
So if you had to tell somebody one thing to take away from feel-good productivity or from feel-good business, what would it be? Like if they were like, there's one thing they could go and do today.
So the first chapter of the book, Feel Good Productivity, is about play. And there's a lot of stories of like famous Nobel Prize winning scientists and, super successful entrepreneurs and athletes and stuff, where they say that the way they approach their work, it's as if they're playing. Now, this is often easier said than done because especially if someone has a normal job where they don't particularly enjoy it, like how do you really approach it with a sense of play? But one phrase that I find super helpful to remember comes from the philosopher Alan Watts, where he says, be sincere, don't be serious. Now imagine playing like a board game with someone. It's no fun playing with someone who takes it too seriously because they're like a stickler for the rules and just kind of driving the energy away, and like it's kind of a bit grim. But you also don't want to play a board game with someone who's completely uncaring. You don't want someone who's just like, who cares? It's just a game. Like, well, that's no fun either. You want someone who plays the board game sincerely. They're sincerely trying to win, but at the same time, they recognize it's a game. And I find that for me, whenever I feel stressed with my work, when I feel anxious, when I feel overwhelmed or anything like that, it's usually because I'm taking something too seriously. I'm thinking of my work as being terribly important. And I think there's a quote from Bertrand Russell, the philosopher, that says that, the biggest kind of, one of the biggest foibles of human nature is that we think our work is terribly important, where it's really not. Most of us are not saving lives on the daily. And so what I would encourage people is to try and think, how can I dial down the seriousness of my work to allow myself to experience that sense of play? And there's a quote I love from the medical drama Grey's Anatomy. The neurosurgeon, Derek Shepherd, played by Patrick Dempsey, he has a ritual at the start of every operation where he greets the team, everyone introduces themselves, and then he puts some music on and he says, "It's a beautiful day to save lives. Let's have some fun." And I just love that. Obviously, it's a TV show and obviously it's dramatized and stuff. But, having worked in operating theaters and stuff, like surgeons genuinely have music in the background. They genuinely joke around. So even when it's life and death, you still get a lot of value from approaching it with a bit more lightness, a bit more sincerity, and kind of treating it like play.
I love that. The other day, I was reading some old texts from the Tao, and one of them that I've been ruminating on a lot lately is your biggest mistake is you think you have time. And I know it's one of those that you're like, oh, it gets you in the gut. But I think everything you're talking about relates specifically back to that. If we know one thing for certain, which is that death is inevitable and that we have less time than probably we value, perhaps it shouldn't all have to be such a struggle. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
Let's see. Is we have a comments section we wanted to go over, Rachel?
We do have a comment section. So somebody commented on one of your posts, and I thought this is probably one of the funniest comments, and I don't know why. So everybody has to let me know if they think this is a good one. You are not your job. Stop job shaming, lady. And I don't know why, like I said, don't know why this is funny, but the stop job shaming, I don't think I've heard of the term job shaming before. This is a new one, but it was from I believe a user called Madonna Nain Newman 7244. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that first? And also, now I need to know, what does an actual day for you look like? Like how many hours are you actually working?
All right. So first let's tackle job shaming. I don't even know what that is. I feel like this is like a new name, like quiet quitting. I'm shaming them for working or for liking their job or for not liking their job. I mean, I don't
Maybe
fucking
for
know.
like embodying, like being too into working.
Oh, right. That's a tragedy.
But like,
yeah, I think.
she's not the one working, like you are.
Yeah.
So why do you care if somebody else is working?
This is welcome to the internet, you know? I think, so listen, there does seem to be this trend on the internet, just about everywhere, where I don't know whether it's insidious, it's calculated, but there is a manipulation of views from the general populace that to like what you do and to like it so much that you are into talking about it all the time, doing it all the time, has become hustle culture, and somehow hustle culture is bad. Now, I think this would be true if you don't have this big, giant opt-out button called the lowest unemployment rate of all time in the US. There has never been more opportunity in our lifetimes to pick whatever fucking level of the game you want. You want level 1 Mario Kart, bouncing around, winning everything? Go do it. If you want level 10, super hard, you might fail a lot, but you're going to work a shit ton, go do it. My whole point is that I do not think you should shame anybody for being here on this planet, producing and working and loving what they do. Because let me tell you what, you like your Tesla? You wouldn't have it if fucking Elon wasn't a psychopath out there working super hard every day. And the same thing goes for most of the things that we take for granted. It's because some irrational human was so driven for the pursuit that they loved, that they labored on, that eventually led to things that you and I get to enjoy. So I'm here, a champion for those who love their labor all over the place. And if you don't love what you do, hey, do you. That makes it easier for me. I'm thrilled. Go fuck off somewhere else with a Mai Tai and spend more money at my companies. No problem. But I think telling people that it's wrong to love what they do is crazy, especially in this environment where nobody's telling anybody anymore you have to work 60, 70, 80-hour weeks. I mean, my company is remote almost entirely, and I think I've run remote companies for 10 plus years now. You don't have to be in office from 7 to 9 if you don't want to be. But if you want to be, go get it and don't feel bad about it. And if you want to work on the weekends, do it. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be on your deathbed wishing that you hadn't worked more. No, that only happens if you're an accountant and you hate accounting. That's how I feel about that.
I also want to know how much you're working though.
Oh yeah, shit.
Yeah.
A lot. God, such a cop-out. But these days, I think I'm probably I work 7 days a week, not all day, every day. And I do it as much as I like for as long as I like to, unless there is something that is needed, at which point I'll do what is needed. Often the team will ask me, Codie, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And I'll sort of push back and say, that's the wrong question. It's what priority level is this for the business and the mission that we're on? We have a mission to free 1 million humans financially. And if that thing that I don't want to do is needed, then I'll do it. If we have to, film TikToks and Instagrams and podcasts for 10 hours, I've done worse. Like, we're going to be fine. We went out and about talking to construction workers in the heat, in the middle of the day, jackhammering the road. And when I think about, man, it's hard to be me behind the computer in air conditioning, sipping on my coconut milk latte, I look at these guys and think, I'm probably fine. I can keep going. And thank God there are some humans like them. I also don't think that you should work until you, quote unquote, burn out. I think you need to know your own balance. And so go get a workout in the middle of the day if you need to. Eat a little bit healthier. Go for a run. Hang out with some buds also. But yeah, I work a lot, maybe 60, 78 hours.
If you were going to give like advice to my generation, which is the people that I graduated college a few years ago, just started, new jobs, stuff like that, what advice would you have around hours working? Because a lot of my friends, I feel like we complain about working really, really long. And I know people that have been in the workforce a lot longer than us don't like hearing us complain. So what do you have to say?
Well, a couple things. Your time should not be tied to your income as often as humanly possible. Nobody on any of my teams hears me say, you haven't worked X amount of hours this week. I think Tanner can attest to that. Now, the flip side of it is the team works really hard. But they work really hard on the things we need them to do at the time that we need it done. And then if they need to go take a Friday off, they don't even ask me. They just tell us what's happening and off they go. So find a job that aligns with your skill set, that the idea of management is not that you owe us your life for deciding to work here. I don't require that. Tanner has goals at the company. And if we hit those goals and are executing on them as much as possible, and he gets that done in 5 hours as opposed to 50, then off for the other 45. And I think that's the way that work should be. We should not be trying to say that your time needs to be clocked in, unless, of course, you're in a place where you have to work every single day. But then my goal would be, if I was you, that's just your level 1 game. Get to level 2. Get to the level two where you have skills that don't necessitate being a bank teller for 15 years. Go from being the bank teller to then eventually managing somebody's money to then having other people manage money underneath you. And that's what minimum wage and those jobs are meant for. They're not meant to stay for you for your entire career. You're meant to climb the ladder from a skills perspective, and then you won't have to work so many hours unless you want to.
On the flip side then, how do you feel about giving advice to people in leadership roles and giving their employees more autonomy towards their own time?
You know, I worked at Goldman Sachs for 2 years during the financial crisis, and they were 60, 70, 80-hour weeks in the office. We didn't see the sun for a period. You know, we were on phone calls and in Excel spreadsheets. Everybody was fine, but vitamin D deficient. And it was miserable. I actually remember very seriously looking at the clock, watching it count down, and ready to be getting out of there the second that I saw, you know, the boss or the manager leave, because I had everything I needed to get done, but I couldn't leave until the head guy left. And it was awful. I remember that so vividly. And to think that you would wait somewhere for your life to actually tick down just because you hate what you're doing so much is actually wild when you think about it. But I've felt it. So I think what managers need to realize and leaders need to realize is there's a reason that Goldman Sachs, the average tenure is 2.5 years. It's because nobody wants to take that bullshit forever. And so I do not think you have to run companies where you are on top of people every single minute. All you have to do is align incentives with outcomes. And that's why, Peter Drucker said, what gets measured gets managed. If instead they gave us goals and they said, execute your goals at your will, we probably would stay at the company longer and we would get more accomplished. And given the cost of turnover for an employee is something like 1 year's salary to 1/3 of a year's salary, depending on level, you should want to try to keep your employees more. And guess what? People work for you longer when they're happier, when they have more fun. And so how can you make sure that you get the right people in the right seats and stop making them trade their time for money? Because that only leads to misery. I think there also needs to be some roadmap for people. Like people on our team, very often we ask them, like, what is it that you want to do? Okay, the business requires this right now. You can't do that thing that you want to do right now. But if you figure out how to achieve this goal and then backfill yourself, let's move to the next layer of the game. I mean, I think like one of the people on our team, Christian, he's had like 3-4 different roles at the company in the last 2 years because he excelled at it, moved himself out of the job, filled the role, went to the next level. And that's the type of company you should be looking for. And as a leader, that's what you should try to do with your people. You want to keep your good ones. Totally.
You kind of explained too, like some people that did hustle early on. I think it's like, we should highlight that in this episode. Like, I know in the show notes you wrote out some of the founders here and some things they went through.
Yeah, let's have a little story time. So, all right, I was looking up, Cody, are you crazy? And can you actually achieve massive success without a lot of work? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's look at a couple billionaires. So I literally pulled the billionaire stories of the first 5 people I found. I did not cherry pick any of these. That's why they're kind of random. The first billionaire CEO story I found, David Freeberg, famous from All In Pod, says that he worked nearly 24/7 for 3 years straight without earning any revenue in his company. He eventually got to $1 billion company. The founder of Forever 21 worked at a gas station, a coffee shop, and a cleaning company all at the same time to get started and get enough money for Forever 21. Larry Ellison of Oracle worked multiple odd jobs at the same time for 8 years in order to start Oracle and become a billionaire. This one I thought was fascinating. Ray-Ban founder worked in a factory for years where he lost his finger before finally getting up enough cash to start his own mold company and create Ray-Ban. The truth is, I can almost always tell who is going to win or who is not going to win in companies that I work with, in companies I invest with, and for the people who work for me. I can almost always tell. There's this little magical something about them. And the first sign of it is that willingness to do more than the other people around them. It's just the easy button. You can't make yourself have a higher IQ, I don't think. You can't make yourself have more money magically. You can't make yourself have better opportunities. Some of that is just out of your control. But what you can certainly do is you can work harder than the next person, and you can take more pain than the next person. And if you do that longer than the other person does, your likelihood of success is just infinitely higher. And maybe this is just because I'm not smart enough to think about a better way to be more successful. But let me tell you what, go ask anybody who's worth millions or has achieved the life that you want to achieve and ask them if they did it without working really hard. And I think pretty quick you'll get your answer. All right. I think that's a wrap. I got a deal for you. And the deal is we got something else for you this week. We've got something free for you. So if you take a screenshot of you reviewing this podcast and subscribing, DM me on Instagram at Codie Sanchez. We're going to send you something worth more than $199, and we're going to give it to you for $3.99, my favorite price. And then give us your feedback on if you like it. I'm going to hand out sort of like different goodies every single week for you guys doing me the solid of reviewing the podcast, sharing the podcast, because we want to grow this thing because I want more humans that are owners in this world. All right, that's the deal.
That I have it, you know that I got it, no need to look all in a bag. Stunning like this cause I work so hard, I'm the best, I only speak facts. If I say that I have it, you know that I got it, no need to look all in a bag.
We ended up signing the deal to sell the company on the single biggest drop in market history.
I am so excited for this guest today. He came from nothing and built not one company, but two companies, sold one for $250 million, and then is building another one that I think is going to be worth even more than the first.
While I was in college, I started earning money with a bunch of like side businesses, making $1 million before I was 21.
What? Were those like the Disney princess quizzes?
Very similar. We got very soft, I think, as a culture for a while. Our Slack would be like someone would post capitalism as a new colonialism. It's like, you're not working in a coal mine. Like what do you want? Like better yogurt? I raised about $70 million on Twitter DMs.
That's amazing.
You can always tell after you start working with someone if you're going to be good.
You think Silicon Valley is kind of dead? This is the Big Deal podcast, and I'm Codie Sanchez. I am so excited for this guest today. He is a friend. I actually invested in his company. But the most interesting part for you is that he came from nothing, came from India all the way to the US and built not one company, but two companies, sold one for $250 million, which is crazy, and then is building another one that I think is going to be worth even more than the first. He shares what he would do if he was going to build from scratch today. He shared how he can tell the difference between A and B players. He shared what it takes to be young and hungry today and have the kind of success that he has. And he also shares a lot of takes on what happens once you make a ton of money. Also, there's some fun little stories in there about everybody from Mark Cuban to Naval Ravikant to the biggest names in Silicon Valley. And so if you are building something today, you are going to want to listen to this. And it is without further ado, I give you Ankur Nagpal, the CEO and founder of Carry and former founder of Teachable. Well, now this office is too small. I was trying not to build a big people company again, but I failed.
Yeah.
So
how big is the team right now?
I don't know, 35 full-time-ish.
Yeah, it's at least for me, I would say up to about 50 was really fun.
Yeah.
When it got to 100, it started feeling less fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the biggest one I've ever done is like 175, 180.
Yeah.
And but you know what? They were really highly paid finance people.
Yeah.
It's honestly easier. Like I just didn't have half the things that I have now in this business.
In what sense? Like
it's perfect incentive alignment.
Yeah.
So like, you need a small legal team, a small compliance team, but all of your salespeople are highly paid and incentive aligned.
Yeah.
All of your portfolio managers are incentive aligned and highly paid.
Yeah.
And so it's like very easy. I mean, we had a quant system that was like, if you hit these, you're fired.
Yeah.
So everybody knew.
It was, you're not like having long one-on-ones on how everyone is feeling. And
God bless me.
Yeah.
I was telling Kate and Mark, our new president, that I want you to meet him. You'd like him. But I'm like, these creatives, they have so many feelings.
Yeah.
One cried in my office the other day, and I was like, I've never fucking seen this before. Yeah. Have you ever had somebody cry at a meeting with you?
So my last company, by the end, like Teachable, it became very hard to manage because, it was also around COVID and just the entire company, people forgot that we were there to make money and grow a business. And it was, things got a little bit out there. Like I remember we would people would get all these aggressive questions on like the snacks in the kitchen not being up to like
Stop it.
yeah, people were like, how do you feel if we unionize? And it's like, you're not working in a coal mine. Like what do you want? Like better yogurt? Like it's just, there was a lot of that for
Where were you based?
Brooklyn, right? So we were the stereotypical like Brooklyn office in 2020. So you can figure out.
God bless.
This time around, even though we're a Brooklyn office, been very careful in who we hire.
Yeah.
So it's not been like that.
No, it's smart. Yeah. Well, I mean, hell, media
but a lot of founders didn't realize that would happen, right? Like when we started the company 2013, 2014, it was a different time.
Yeah, that was not the case. No, we've come full circle. I mean, even now in media, I think the sad part is that people don't realize when they want those things is the first kiss of death.
Yeah.
And so, they think that it sounds good and then they don't realize that it leads to lack of profitability, which leads to people getting fired, which leads to like worse working conditions.
We had like crazy people. Like our Slack would be like someone would post capitalism as a new colonialism. It's like, dude, like Jesus Christ, like you don't, things that are like really like, yeah, like you're not being oppressed. It's fine.
Oh, I did get somebody say to me the other day that, what's wrong with California is capitalism. And I was like, like, wait a second, what?
So this time around, I mean, we've made sure that everyone who wants to work really wants to play for a team that wins, right? And that is important to them. And because for a lot of people, they don't care, like they used to not care if the company did well or not. And this time we fixed that.
How do you figure out if somebody wants to win or not?
I think you talk, like, I think in the interview process, you spend time finding out what motivates them and why they're there. And also we are unapologetically like, hey, we're here to build a very large and successful company. Last time, I think we overplayed the mission side because, like, again, mission is important, but we still wanted people who are primarily there to win. But last time we're like, hey, education is really important. But then we ended up getting a lot of ex-teachers and who struggled when things got hard.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is your last Teachable sold for $250 million. Yeah. Did you think when you started your business that it would ever sell for $250 million?
No one does, right? Yeah. No one does. It's an insane amount of money. And at every step, though, it was just like focused on the next milestone. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to build a very large and successful business one day, but I didn't think if that was $50 million or $100 million or $1 billion. But no.
When you started, though, like you didn't make a ton of money at first, right? What's the least amount of money you've ever made in a year?
Well, the first year I didn't really pay myself anything. So I didn't make any money while running Teachable. And my first salary...
How'd you live?
My first salary was $70,000. So I was fortunate in that when I moved to America, I didn't really have much. But while I was in college, I started earning money with a bunch of like side businesses. And that helped me make enough money that in my early 20s, I was living on my savings.
Interesting. What were your side businesses in college?
So I built Facebook apps. So this was back in the day when, you could send people gifts and stuff on Facebook. And it was crazy. It started my freshman summer. At the end of my freshman summer, I was making like $20 a day, but all the way scaled to 50 grand a day and making $1 million before I was 21.
What? Were those like the Disney princess quizzes?
Very similar. So we had all kinds. We had like how good a answer this quiz and you'll find out how good a lover are you. And people would like repeatedly take the quiz again and again till they got the results they wanted, and then they would post it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it was 3 years of that, but it was just all kinds of like dumb things, but it really teaches you viral marketing and growth at a very early age. Like at our peak, we had more traffic than LinkedIn, Yelp, about the same as New York Times. We had like, I think like 4 or 5 million teenagers basically using it every single day.
Get out.
Yeah.
Did you, how did you come up with that?
So started after my freshman summer when, they launched the Facebook platform. And at first there were silly apps that would make $10 a day, $20 a day, but it was a crazy time because you could literally reach millions of people in 24 hours. It was the first time that you could go viral or whatever. And it was just years of experimentation and finding things that worked.
Yeah. So you were a bunch of nerds. Where'd you go to school?
Berkeley.
So Berkeley.
Yeah.
So you're just eating granola.
It was a bunch of
nerding out on coding.
Yep.
And throwing up lover apps.
I was very disappointed because I just moved to America to college, and it sounds really dumb, but all I knew of the US at the time was movies. So I was expecting American Pie, but instead I got like Berkeley, California. So
You're like, they don't shave armpits.
yeah, I was like, this is not the vibe. This is not what I thought it would be like.
That's
You know,
wild because you're from where originally?
I'm originally from India, but I grew up in Oman in the Middle East. So my first day in the US was Berkeley. And I remember it was me and two other kids in our entire dorm that even drank alcohol. That seemed crazy because I was expecting the stereotypical frat party American college experience, but did not get that.
How did you pick Berkeley?
It was the best school I got into. I got rejected from every Ivy League school, and it was. I wish I could say that it was some sort of like unbounding loyalty or whatever. But as an international student, you don't visit colleges or anything, right? Like you literally apply to a bunch of places and you go into any place that is like best ranked or whatever.
Interesting. Did you come from money?
No, my parents were middle class. Probably by the time I went to college, like they had spent most of their adult life saving to send me to college. So there was a lot of responsibility that came with that. My dad also always wanted to start a business, but it never felt financially responsible of him to. So I had a job. I mean, we were comfortable, but definitely middle class.
Do you buy your parents stuff now?
Yeah, I mean, that's been the nicest thing of this whole process.
What's the coolest thing you've ever bought your parents?
Honestly, we just go on really nice vacations all the time. And I was actually thinking, in some ways, it's nice that we didn't come from a lot of money because I have friends who are rich. And even though they've done well, when they take their parents on vacation, they just pay for the same experiences their parents always had. But for me, like now we can stay in nicer places than they have ever experienced. I get to see them experience all these things for the first time ever. So that part's really cool.
What's your favorite one you've ever done?
So I was just saying in December, my parents have never been to South America. They wanted to like see as much of the continent as possible in 3 weeks. So it's incredible. We went to Patagonia on the Argentinian side and the Chilean side, and the Atacama Desert in northern Chile, drove to Bolivia, saw the salt flats, flew to Peru, Machu Picchu. Pretty incredible 3 weeks.
That's insane.
Yeah.
By the way, Atacama is amazing, isn't it? It's like 3 worlds.
It's the stars are. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, it's sick. I would totally go back there. Okay, so built this huge business. Didn't come from a ton. What's the most amount of money you've ever made in a year? What was your killerest year?
At Teachable, it was just the exit year because when you're running a startup, I'll tell you my entire salary history, like 6 months of nothing, then $70,000 a year. Then I think it was 105, then 120, and then 150. And once you hit $150,000, at that point, it's, I was still single, no dependents, living in New York City. You're not balling out, but it was enough that I was focused on the business.
Yeah.
And then you sell the business and make, basically infinite money. Infinite money. Yeah.
Do you ever say how much you sold the business for? You say 250 million, right?
I'm supposed to say I think this one we're to say it's a reported 250 because at one point the acquirer didn't want to, but yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And how much of the business did you own at that time?
Half.
Dang.
Yeah.
So that's pretty infinite money.
It's pretty much infinite money. I mean, half of it was cash, half of it was stock. But again, the way I look at it is there's nothing I want that I can't have. And at this point, if I make more money, it's for the love of the game versus like what else I could do with the money.
What do you mean when you say it's for the love of the game? Like, why keep going after you've made $100 million?
It's my sport. Like, it's like if someone is a great tennis player or whatever, like not going to retire at 31 or 32. They want to do this for another 5 years, 10 years. It's a thing that it gives me joy. Very competitive person, and it's my arena and place to compete.
Yeah, I've seen that firsthand.
Yeah.
I was watching you at the dinner when everybody was kind of, and you're like, tell me about what's really going on there. I don't believe it. So you now have built how many companies?
Meaningful companies too, but in college, we never built any enterprise value with this business, but, straight up made cash.
Yeah.
So
it was just a cash line profitable business from day one, basically.
The lifetime of a lot of these applications was 30 to 60 days. But again, our peak days were 50 grand a day, which at 20 years old was insane. Like even if you had 10 or 20 good days, that was amazing.
Yeah, I think that's pretty rad at any
Yeah.
age. You know what's also crazy is, like, I feel like because we're in Twitter or X or whatever you call it, you start to get this warped worldview where everybody all of a sudden is making 7 figures every weekend. And anything that's less than that is like small or not interesting. And I think one of the cool parts about the company you're building now is like, that's not the case. You're like very much for the small business owner, which is why I invested, obviously.
I think we saw a lot of it firsthand running Teachable, where a lot of people were first-time entrepreneurs making money for the first time. So I was like, how can we almost continue that journey where we help them with the next part of their life, which is actually taking their earnings and building wealth?
Yeah. Wait, you know what I want to talk about? Didn't you send me back in the day, didn't you fundraise for this company off of a Notion document?
Yeah.
That was a sick Notion document. Have you ever shared that?
I'm sure I've probably should share it publicly. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to find out. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But you basically, everybody thinks it's really hard to get strangers money. You did it a really weird way. Talk to us about how you got other people to give you cash.
Yeah. So actually, if you go back right before that, when I fundraised for my fund, I raised about $70 million on Twitter DMs with, I want to say, like maybe under 5 actual meetings.
What was in the DM?
It was
lots
straight
of
up.
feed pics.
It was lots of feed pics. Subscribe to my OnlyFans. Fund this. You get free lifetime access. No, it was a Notion doc. Granted, the good thing is 2 big things were happening for me. 1, I had a track record. Fund 1 was doing well.
Yeah.
And 2, it was the best time in human history to raise capital. Right, 0 interest rates and stuff. But yeah, I raised money from 200 LPs, including like Tiger Global was my biggest investor. I raised money from like 10 other venture firms and 50 partners from venture firms, all just by DMing people.
That's wild. And what was in the Notion doc? Because I think this is like one of the things everybody always asks me, how much money do you have to buy a business? How much money do you have to start a business? And my answer is 0.
Yeah.
Because it's actually never a lack of money. It's a lack of knowledge. But that sounds like a rich person thing to say.
Yeah.
Until you realize how to get other people's capital. So like if somebody was asking you like, Ankur, right now, I need to get rich people's money in order to build this thing. What would you tell them?
I think you have to, for what worked for me was I had real fucking skin in the game. So what most people don't understand is they look at a venture fund. Venture funds charge 2 and 20, right? Which is 2% management fee or 20% carry, which is the take of profits. What people don't understand is it's actually closer to 20 and 20. It's one of the best kept secrets because venture funds charge those fees for 10 years. So if you raise $100 million, the investor makes 20 million bucks, maybe even 25, regardless of how the fund does. What I did with my fund is I took 0 management fees, which was absurd for a fund of that size, and a quarter of all the capital was mine. So yes, the Notion doc is important. Yes, like the mechanism is important. But end of the day, people saw I had real skin in the game, that it became much easier for them to say yes.
Yeah. And I think if somebody wasn't you with your background, they would just decrease the fees. They'd just say, hey, instead of everybody else wants this much money, I'm going to take half of that.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to actually take no management fee and I'm only going to participate in the upside. If you make money, I make money. If you don't make money, I don't make money.
And what people don't realize is to be an investor, it's actually not that hard to build a track record because you could invest $1,000 checks. Like a lot of people think, I need to be, a millionaire or make tens of millions of dollars to invest. But I tell a lot of people, if you want to put $20,000 or $30,000, you could get started. Just make sure you do 20 deals because it takes a while to learn how this game works. And it is a game of numbers.
Totally. I think your first 50K, you kind of got to assume you're going to lose 49,000 of it.
But one of them could return 100x and the math works out.
Yeah. That's also the interesting part. A lot of times, so we're on our second fund. And I remember when I was first starting out, I used to think, I just want to get a little bit in a bunch of deals. Then I think one of your deals, I think it was this company, was too full. And you were like, yeah, you can come in for like 10K. And I was like, Ankur, no fucking way. Give me more money, which really means let me invest more money in you. Otherwise, I don't want to do the deal. And I think that's another thing that people don't realize is that there's so much money that the wealthy have that they actually fight over who can give good entrepreneurs more money. I never knew that when I was young.
It's a stagger. Like if you make 10 million, if you have a net worth of $10 million, you are not in the top 1% of households. It's crazy. You're like top 1.5, but you're on the top 1% with a $10 million net worth. It is completely absurd.
Yeah. And I think the other thing I'd be curious your take is like, Also, the more money you have, not really, like the less pain you really want to tolerate. And so like money is like a risk trade-off with pain. And so they want young people who are hungry and willing to tolerate pain for them. And if they're competent, they'll give you cash.
100%. And I think for a lot of people, especially when they get to a certain amount of wealth, it also has like they care about the other things. It's like, is it a good narrative? Is it a good story? Is it something I want to tell my friends about? And also then the actual dollar amount becomes less important because they'd rather do fewer, bigger things, easier to keep track of versus just like doing little pieces of everything.
Yeah, that's a good move. What would I have to do to pitch you? Like if I was young and hungry and I wanted you to give me money.
Yeah. So for me, a surprising amount of companies I've invested in have been cold DMs. I think, I don't know about you, but for me, email is dead as a channel. It's just impossible. It's impossible.
I also assume it's spam immediately.
Yeah, it's impossible to keep track of. I've given up.
So the if I am going to get Ankur to give me some of his 100 million, I'm going to DM you on Twitter.
I've honestly been DM'd on Instagram. LinkedIn's a little harder, but it doesn't even have to be Twitter. Just some place where I will someday see a message.
Interesting.
And even then, I rarely have invested the first time around. But I think people see progress. So if I see someone either repeatedly DMing or having improved substantially every single time, I think that's really valuable.
Yeah. What do you think the percentage of people are that ever follow up with you to get money?
With good pitches, very low. There's a lot of like automated cold outreach type stuff that is terrible. And those people follow up and that's just straight, you're just getting blocked. But I think, I forgot the data, but like I think the first 7 emails you send or something, the chances of getting a response are the same, which means you should send 7 emails because if you have a 5% chance, you'll have a 5% chance even the 7th time you send a message, which is staggering.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That is a life hack.
Yeah.
Because that basically means, you can hit somebody up 7 times. They probably don't even see the first go round. And at some point, there's some switch that flips, I think, with people who were entrepreneurs that are like, oh, this kid's a little psychopath too.
Yeah.
But I'm at least going to respond to them and be like, game, recognize this game.
The switch flips and there's just dumb luck and serendipity. Like very often I will respond to something because I was on the screen already when it just being the right place, the right time. So sometimes many shots on goal is helpful because you happen to catch someone at the right time or right place or whatever.
Yeah. The other interesting part I'm always shocked by is how few people keep going after the target that they really want. It's like they'll send you one message. If you don't respond, they'll think it's embarrassing to send 2. And so they'll just never hit you up again.
No, I think being persistent pays off so much. I mean, and I still remember like, okay, now people will respond to me. But even when I was 18, 19 years old, every time I emailed Mark Cuban, he replied. It's crazy.
He is known for that.
Yeah. It was wild. I was like, oh, I could email him and he'll just reply to me.
Dude, Mark Cuban also, guy's off the rails slightly now with love, Mark.
Yeah.
But on Instagram, I posted something basically saying it was about, remember when they were trying to restrict prices under the last administration? They're like, no, it's a good thing to have price capping.
Yeah.
And I was like, I spent a lot of time in Latin America.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a good thing. Here's my rationale. And I used a friend of mine's on Twitter to like explain it in third person. And Mark commented on my Instagram post and was like, no, this is not right. And if you'd like me to explain it to you so you can understand, I'm happy to DM me. I know. But then I went into the DMs and I was like, saw your thing. I was like, does it ever work when you speak like that to someone? And he was like, I'm sorry, that was slightly contentious. I'm like, yeah, it was. Yeah. Like, that's not going to get anybody to change their mind. But then he's come back around. He's, just can't keep a guy down.
He's done. I don't think anyone has timed an exit as well as he did. He sold a company that did very little for like $5 billion or whatever back in the late 90s, or a time when $5 billion was a lot more than it is today.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did a pretty good exit from the Mavericks too. Because didn't he exit and sell it to Adelson or whoever? Yeah. Adelson. And then, it's fascinating. Okay, well, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was, why did you choose? I can't remember your origin story. Like, what was the pain point that made you choose to build Teachable?
So I'd moved to America, spent all this time building Facebook apps, scaled that business. And honestly, then I hit 2 years of what in retrospect is sort of an entrepreneurial rut where I probably tried 10 or 15 different businesses. and nothing quite took off. And the journey you have as an entrepreneur is you don't even realize it's not taking off. You try a thing, you always get a little bit of feedback. Nothing is that exciting, but then you have a new idea and you're pulled into it, right? So this happened for about 2 years. During that period, I started teaching a little bit on Udemy. I taught in-person classes at General Assembly and built the first version of Teachable as a side project. But the difference with this side project is we just saw market pull from day one.
What does that feel like? Because I think somebody who's never felt it, they don't even know what it feels like to have something that works versus doesn't.
So, and the funny thing is, because I kept asking myself, is this working? Is it not working? But the biggest thing is the first month we processed maybe like $3,000 in course sales. But every single month after that, we processed a little bit more. Until 8 or 9 months in, we were doing $40,000, $50,000 a month in course sales across, I want to say 15, 20 creators. And I was like, wow, there may be a real business here. And then I went to Silicon Valley, raised venture round and decided, okay, this is a company.
Could you ever have done that in India?
I think now the world has changed quite a bit where India has now become a pretty good place for entrepreneurship and startups because it's such a large market size. But the thing I appreciated the most about Silicon Valley is it takes young people seriously in a way that most of the world doesn't.
That's a great line. What do you mean by that?
So when I was 19 years old, 20 years old, I was in college. I had the chance to meet, Mark Andreessen, Naval Ravikant, like all these like people that were iconic and I looked up to, and they all took me very seriously, almost as a peer. Like, what are you going to build? Like, this sounds so great. Contrast that with when I went to India and I tried to meet with the CEO of a couple of smaller companies who would condescendingly ask where my parents were, right? It's such a different attitude. And I think San Francisco and Silicon Valley knows that young people have historically done incredible things. So young people are taken very seriously.
Yeah, it's a good point because you're kind of seeing it, whether people like this administration or not, but how the old infrastructure of government is looking at young people coming in with disdain. They're like, this 20-year-old, this 21-year-old. And I think there's no longer this barrier between ability to execute and age. In fact, I mean, the speed at which I see young people able to force function moves with technology means that we're getting slightly more obsolete the older we get.
Also, what you realize is young people typically tend to have so much more time, right? Like they're very time rich. And as a result, can go so much deeper into a lot of things. Like again, imagine if we get to a world where the cost of building something just comes down to how much time you have to play with the thing to build it. It's advantage young people. I mean, you just have so much more time. And that's what I mean when people say Silicon Valley is an idea versus a place. But the idea of Silicon Valley was always, 18, 19, 20-year-olds are going to do amazing things. So listen to them, let them do their thing.
Yeah. And they have the best risk reward trade-off ever, which is a future appearance of time because they're young and simultaneously no real risks because they don't have anything yet.
Absolutely. And if there's anyone, I always tell people if you're 18, 19, or 20, you're in a golden window where a lot more people will be willing to meet with you because of your promise and your potential. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, I think it was easier for me to meet with a lot of iconic Silicon Valley people because I was 18 or 19. So I could be introduced to someone with a bright future. 28, I mean, you're still young, but you're not like, oh, this crazy young person with a bright future.
Were you like a little genius?
I think it was because of the Facebook applications that I built a business that was doing well. Growing up in high school and stuff, I was always smart, but I was pretty rebellious. So my grades were never very good. I wanted to play cricket internationally. So sport was more important to me. I was always smart, but I was barely top 20% of my class, which wasn't that good.
Interesting. And then today, you're building a brand new company. Why did you choose this one?
So it was while selling my last business. And again, as an immigrant, I know nothing about the tax code, nothing about how money works, personal finance. I wasn't investing. I was doing nothing. But I realized how with smart lawyers and accountants, how much opportunity there is in our tax code. And there's no easy way of accessing it. So that was a little bit of a light bulb moment that I was like, if there was an easy way to productize all these tax savings, the tax code, that would be kind of a fun business to build. It's valuable to people. I also like I've always loved, if there's a system, how can you be smart about it? How can you hack the system, break the system, whatever? And this felt like a challenge that way. Like, like here's a system with a bunch of rules, but there's loopholes. How do you actually help people take advantage of these loopholes? So it was a fun kind of business to work on.
How big is the business now?
So we're a little bit over 2 million in annualized revenue. We custody a little bit over $100 million in customer assets, which is good. We're a couple of years in, and part of me as a founder is like, I wish we were 10 times bigger. But the nature of the space we're in is people trust us with their retirement dollars. And as a result, we are regulated as we should be. And there's a lot of responsibility when it comes to running these kinds of businesses that you have to sort of set up the right infrastructure. We're trying to long-term compete with Vanguard, Schwab, Fidelity, and these companies that are, anywhere from 40 to 100 years old. Yeah. And we're fine if it takes a little bit longer.
Did you have to pay a lot of money for that website name, your domain name?
Codie.com, yes. I signed very strict paperwork allowing me to never talk about how much, but it was quite significant.
Why do they always want you guys to never say how much people pay for one-word domains? Is it just like one conglomerate that owns all these and then they say don't tell anybody?
I think the biggest reason is there's no objective way of valuing a domain, right? Because it's such an illiquid market that there's not that many buyers and not that many sellers, but the sellers are pretty smart. They're happy to wait almost an infinite amount of time. Like, for instance, someone revealed they paid $2 million for friend.com, which is insane. We didn't pay anywhere near that much. And
I was going to guess 7 figures, but okay, we won't tell our friends on the internet. Okay, I don't want to get you sued in the portfolio company we invested in.
Exactly.
That's what. Yeah, well, I think, and you just get killed on the internet. Remember when Nick and Sean Puri put somewhere, and then I think they only paid like $400K for it. Not only that is
a lot of money. Yeah.
400K is a lot of money for somewhere.com, and then they just got massacred.
I will say that we have made a very strong ROI already.
Yeah,
because we deal with people's dollars, so trust is really important, and a domain is a way of shortcutting that trust.
Yeah. Do you think yours is better than contrarianthinking.co?
I think we're about the same, roughly equivalent.
I can probably sell mine for $2 million too. I'm actually so bad at branding; it's almost laughable. Like, can you spell how many?
So here's why that could be a good thing for a lot of people. In that, I think too many people worry about it too soon. Like, again, when we started Teachable, the company was called Fedora, which is an awful name. Domain name used fedora.com. But guess what? We spent no time on it. We got to market faster. We got real customers faster.
Yeah.
You can fix brand later on. People don't realize that. Like, you can fix brand a year in, 2 years in. At any given point, like even now, we're a little bit over 2 years in. But 10 years from now, almost all of our customers 10 years from now are in our future, right? So that was the sort of attitude that you hold on a lot to what you already have. But the majority of your customers in 10 years, you've not met yet. They're in your future. What you have now is a tiny, tiny percentage of them.
That's a great point because, part of the reason so many people, I think, never become entrepreneurs or get real revenue in their business is they have this whole story about what it takes. It's like, I need a website and then an LLC and then insurance. I see it on my YouTube comments all the time. It's like, you missed 12 steps. It's like, nobody does all 12 steps in a row. You just start and you go.
Even like, again, our business helps people save money on taxes. The number of times I have to tell people you don't have a tax problem, you need to make more money, right? Like, your problem right now is not taxes. You're making $30,000 a year. Great. It's a great start. Just doing it is important. Don't try and save taxes on 30 grand. Think about how you can 10x your business. And then we'll talk about saving money on taxes.
Yeah, well, because the thing with Carrie that I think is unique is it's really focused on businesses and small businesses. And so basically, if you ever run a small business, taxes are the biggest pain in the ass. And you're always getting these, different notices from all over the place. And then your taxes will materially differ depending on who you get advice from. And so it's often not a how, it's a who, and the who can totally fuck you. And so the cool part about the software, I'm like sipping my own Kool-Aid here, but is that you have standardization.
Yeah. And the US tax code, when you look at it, I think you can tell a lot about what a country stands for, what it incentivizes by looking at its tax code. And the US tax code is written in favor of business owners, which I think is great. Like, the country wants to incentivize the creation of business. So it's the challenge we have is how do we productize that so people can take advantage of all of that? Yeah. It's like taxes are not why people become business owners, but it's just one other perk, which is why when you look at, the wealthiest people in the country, not only are they typically business owners, they're also paying taxes at a much lower rate than regular salaried employees.
Yeah. If you weren't going to run this business, what's the other business that you're like, God, that's a cool opportunity right now?
I want to buy a cricket team. I mean, honestly, that's not a
the richest person thing you've ever said.
That is not a. It's partially rich person. It's partially for my failed athletic dreams, right? It's like if you can't do the thing yourself, like at least buy the business that does the thing.
I like that. I think that's actually, isn't that one of my favorite guys is Wayne Huizinga, the guy who started Waste Management. And that was it. He's like drove trash trucks, owned trash trucks, played in trash until he owned 3 baseball teams and also dated
There's
models.
a non-insignificant number of people, I think, who have been very successful in business who would give it all up for like their failed sports dreams.
Are you one of them?
Probably. Like it's as I'm getting older, that trade-off is getting harder because now I'd be at close to my professional sports retirement age. So maybe not, but there were times like a few years ago I was like, would I give it all up to be like really good at cricket, play in a large stadium, hear the fans chant your name? Yeah, probably.
But then you'd come to the US and nobody would know who you are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that is a little bit of a
downside. You got to pick like football or something, or like international football.
There's 0 brown people in any major American sport, which is insane.
Is that true?
I think there's a half Indian dude in the NHL. That's about as close.
Well,
I think we have no one in the NBA, the NFL, and MLB.
That's wild because you should.
But
your population.
We're killing it. Spelling bee, you're not competing with
you
us.
are dominant. And procreation.
Yeah.
You guys figured out procreation. You like
and
it.
Being CEOs.
Yeah. It's actually really cool watching the growth. I mean, because it's interesting. Like different demographics do have these natural tendencies towards entrepreneurship. And India's huge at it. I mean, in a force multiplier way. Like we have a lot of Latin American entrepreneurs, but we have nowhere near the percentage 100. Who get the scale that. Why is that?
I also think it's exacerbated in immigration patterns because the enterprising Indian people are the ones who came here. So it is much stronger in the US. Like a lot of immigration in the US were people who came and bought small businesses.
Yeah. Like, is it just really hard to get here from India? And so the people who get here, you're like, that's the cream of the crop.
Like, for instance, like there's a lot of Gujarati people here. And I was reading it's staggering. I think like half of all small motels are owned by them. And they're all like, one extended family or something.
Yeah. I remember Twitter not liking it, but I was thinking that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really, and I think that's also one of the things, that I think America stands for, or at least used to stand for, maybe still does or whatever, is it becomes this magnet where if you are a person that wants to go do a thing and build a thing, you move here. Which is why for my dad, it was very clear that, I would do better in a country like America. And I think it's important we maintain that.
I totally agree. It's like half the point of everything we do. I mean, I continue to be blown away that only 6% of Americans own businesses. That number to me just like doesn't make sense in my head.
I bet that doesn't account for the one-person business.
Because it counts for the one-person business, but it doesn't account for non-revenue producing businesses.
Okay.
Because LLC creation, more than I do. There's a shit ton of those. Yeah. But those are just incorporated businesses that never actually are realized. Yeah. I mean, we could somebody will tell me on the internet if I'm a liar.
Because the numbers I looked at was more if you include all kinds of self-employment income.
The highest I've seen is 11%. What was the highest you saw?
I saw something higher, but the denominator, but it also depends. Is the denominator people that are eligible to start a business? Are we excluding, 9-year-olds and, stuff like that as well?
Yeah. And what is the category of business?
Yeah.
I guess as long as anyway, we don't have to get too wonky, but if you like measure it the same way across all countries and then see which ones have the highest. But I wanted to talk a little bit about some cool things you do at your company, Carrie. For instance, I saw this tweet that I thought was brilliant about how you do vacation policy to keep high-level people, but make them stay in office the rest of the year.
Yeah. So we're in the office every day of the year. I'm not strict about it. Like if someone comes in 4 times a week or whatever, it's fine. But the default expectation is we're in the office every single day. But we're remote for 1 month. And partially it's because for anyone in New York, winter in New York can be soul crushing. So we're remote in February, in the office 11 months of the year, which I think works pretty well.
I don't know why. I would be scared that my business might fall apart. It doesn't.
the business doesn't fall apart. It is still, you still have to learn how to do it. And I'll be candid, we're still learning how to get good when we're remote. Um, it is something I kind of battle against a little internally because I love being in office. I think we're super productive. But the downside is we're not taking advantage of a global workforce. So we're paying New York salaries for pretty much all roles.
Yeah.
And over a long period of time, am I missing out by not hiring an amazing person for some specific skill because they live elsewhere? Potentially. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that evolves.
Have you found that by letting people go for a month remote, you retain people more, you get better caliber of talent?
The thing that's been interesting is when most people come back, their reaction is not like, that's sick, why can't we do it always? Like, they're like, yeah, it was great. But they're like, oh, I missed the office. I kind of missed being around everyone. And it almost builds renewed enthusiasm for being back at the workplace.
Interesting. I think we're thinking about trialing something like that in August here, or maybe July, because it's
People
miserable.
are like, again, there's no one, and also the benefit you have is like people got annoyed on the internet as they always do, but no one in our current company has kids. But I think we have kids, you have to do it over the summer, right? Because no one can go in February.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Why don't you just hang out with the kids more?
Yeah.
Or is that not? Is that something a person without kids would say?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we won't put that on Twitter, so I get murdered.
Good for engagement.
Exactly. Well, that is true. So, we know that 90% of startups fail, but you chose to keep doing startups anyway. Were you ever scared that you weren't going to make it or that it was going to fail?
I am more scared this time, and I'll tell you why. Because the first time, it doesn't matter. You're expected to fail. The first time, like most companies fail, you'll probably fail. It's fine. This time, I have a stronger fear of failure because I've built up this like self-image of myself as someone that is good at companies. I've told other people what to do. I've sat on panels telling people what to do. It'd be fucking embarrassing to publicly fail. So this time, there's more of a fear. But what I've realized as a second-time founder is a lot of things are easier. Fundraising is easier, hiring is easier, but truly building a product that people like is always going to be hard.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
But you're right. It is scarier, especially when you're public. I think about that now with these companies, and we have a lot of companies. So like ultimately one of them that is public will fail.
Yeah.
And I have a bunch of self-worth wrapped up in that.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm always mouthing off on the internet about stuff. I better know what the fuck I'm talking about.
I'm like, oh, how embarrassing. They all like the startup guru, like, telling everyone what to do. But the funny thing is what you'll find at least is even if that were to happen, there may be some pockets that may kind of laugh at you or whatever. But the people who build businesses ultimately know how difficult this whole thing is, that you're not going to get that from them.
Yeah. Do you try to surround yourself with a certain type of person in order to achieve these big things and not get crushed?
Probably more so when I was younger, when I was living in California, I did that. Now, honestly, I like a diversity of people in that I like people that are very competitive, but they don't have to all be competitive at building the largest startup. Like I'll get bored if I'm around people that don't want to be the best at something, but I can be around people that want to be the best at like running a sub 3-hour marathon or like the best at whatever special skill. I think that kind of diversity is probably more fun than just people that want to build startups or businesses or whatever.
Yeah. And I do think at some point levels to the game, you kind of, money becomes slightly less interesting to talk about and it's more the game and winning.
Yeah.
I've sort of had to pressure myself into keep talking about money because when I was younger, I wish that other people would have told me the truth. They're like, how much did you make? How much did you actually spend? Like, what happens at this point? And I think once you start, you just don't talk about that anymore. And the people who do kind of talk about it in a scammy way and it's not real.
Yeah.
So I think it's cool that you still share so many of here's how much money we made. Here's what happened here. Like, that's really rare.
Yeah. I think the other thing I've talked to friends in similar spaces is a lot of people ended up having very different attitudes towards it. And the thing I've tried to consciously be careful of is not to become the person where they're so addicted to the chase of more money for the money itself, where it becomes a little like you'll never be enough. Like I know people who have mid hundreds of millions of dollars who are sad they're not a billionaire. And I don't know. I find that kind of sad. Like I think if you want to be a billionaire because you want to win the game, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But if you feel like you don't have enough and you're coming from this place of scarcity, that's something I'm consciously trying to avoid.
Yeah. Do you still feel like you're poor and you don't have money? Or have
No,
you
I
gotten
feel
over
like I
that?
have an infinite amount of money. I like it's not as I said, it's not that I'm lacking for anything. I think if anything, what will change by my further success is a number that I go to the grave with in like all practical yet somewhat dark terms.
That's so fascinating. So you don't have any of that poor kid mentality anymore.
No, I think I have.
Did
I
you
think I'm very
ever?
blessed. I think I have infinite. When I first came to America, I remember just like because my parents had saved their entire life for me to be there. I was like, I didn't spend money. Like spending money felt frivolous and stupid. And I think that sort of sense of scarcity made me appreciate not having to think about money. So to me, it's amazing to not have to think about it. Like, let's imagine we're on a family vacation, flights get canceled, we need to go rebook some expensive flights. Just not having to think about any of that, being like, oh, here's a credit card, I don't have to worry about it. That to me is the real value of it. Yeah, when I fly whatever business class, first class. My seat is flat, but I don't need a private jet.
Yeah, agree.
So stuff like that.
Sometimes I'd like one though.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. We were on a tiny one the other day to Marfa because we bought some land out there, which is a ridiculous thing, but it was for the anyway. So, and the one nice thing about them is just the time savings. But the thing that people don't realize, like a nice business class seat, way nicer than a seat, except on the biggest jet out there. So I think a lot of this is just flexing on the internet.
The pain of maintaining stuff, and yes, eventually you can outsource that and you scale it all out, is a lot of times someone was telling me, some old like billionaire dude or whatever, that like there's no yacht better than your friend's yacht. Like if like like if you get to like do the fun thing once in a while when you have to deal with it, but not deal with all the work that it entails, that's the best.
I agree with that. I still totally have the poor kid mentality. I don't know if I'll ever get rid of it, where I'm pretty sure at any moment, like we could totally be broke again. And I don't know if that's an edge sometimes or not, but I think it's really cool that you seem to have been like, no, I'm going to be really grateful for what I have. And I think that's a total hack.
It's a battle I have to have with my mom quite often because she's always like, oh, like you're paying for this like slightly expensive vacation. What if you run out of money? I'm like, Mom, I can show you an Excel model, right? Like we can play with this. Like that's not how math works. Like we can, like I could spend 10 times more, and like this is not. We'll be fine.
I love the line, Mom, I'm going to show you an Excel model. She's like, that doesn't help.
Yeah, it doesn't help. She's like, this feels like a lot of money.
That's really sweet, though. What would you tell, a young kid listening to all this today who is just like, man, I don't know if I'm smart enough. I don't know if I can code. I don't know if I'll ever get there. What should I start? What would you tell a 20-something that wanted to be you?
I think when I started, and I think it's true for a lot of people, there's a certain element of like doing these things for the love of the game in a way that, yes, part of my motivation was to be very successful and make a lot of money. But I also really liked building shit, playing with things, growing products, and to kind of not forget that part. I think anyone listening to this right now, you're in such a fun time to build and play with stuff. Like back when I was in high school, we used like Microsoft Front Page to build web. It was like the tooling was awful, right? Like now there's incredible tools where you can imagine anything, build stuff. I think it's a great time to like, just go deep on that, have fun with it. And I think it's a phenomenal time for that.
Yeah. I mean, I think also if you do interesting things, then interesting people find you interesting.
100%.
And so just build something, whatever it is. Especially because these days, I mean, we find this on the internet. People think it's cool that you start a vending machine route and you talk about it. Like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist, but just try to build. And I think we're losing some of that.
I think like the act of creation. I guess I talked about the good part now. I think the dangers of now is it's become so much easier to consume. Like there's so much more stuff to consume that it's very easy to fall into this consumption trap where like you're spending 4 hours a day watching TikTok videos or whatever. That fighting that I would imagine to be the hardest challenge. I don't know what it's like to grow up when you've been, I was talking to someone who had Instagram since she was 11 years old. I don't know what that does to your brain or what that's like to deal with. So I guess being able to counter that is probably the challenge. But yeah, if you can create instead of consume, that'll take you a long way.
You're single, right?
Yeah.
Not married.
Not
No
married.
girlfriend.
No girlfriend at the moment.
Why not?
Oh, yeah, is that? I mean, I was in a pretty long-term relationship when I was young, like 20 to 27, and
Mhm.
I think dating in New York can be quite fun. But the downside of that is, I think the challenge a lot of people have is there's a little bit of the shiny object syndrome,
Yeah.
where you're
Too many
dating
models.
when you're dating someone and there's someone else, and
Not Excel models. Other
yeah,
models.
correct. Yeah, but with that said, I mean,
How old are you?
I'm 35 now.
Yeah.
And my parents weren't that excited when I started the second business. They're like, you should get a wife. Like that, we would be more excited at this point with a wife than another company. So
Were they nervous when you started your first one? And how did you deal with the fact that maybe you wanted to take a different path than what your parents wanted you to do?
it polarized my mom and dad a little bit, because initially they were supportive, but then I said I had 2 years of nothing quite working out, and my dad was very much like, dude, just keep trying stuff. Like, like I wanted to do a business, I never could. You have every opportunity in the world. You're super young. My mom was like, why don't you get a job at Facebook? They may hire you. Like you should go work for someone. So it bifurcated a little between the two. But as soon as the company started doing well, I think my mom was happy.
Got on board. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. But even like when I was close to dropping out of college at one point, my mom was very against that. I think my dad's a little bit more risk taking.
would you tell a younger version of you to do the same path?
I'm very happy with the path I took. I think I was very fortunate that I was in the right place at the right time. Like when I look at all the people I met when I was in California between the age of like 18 and 23, they've all gone on to do such incredible things. There's something special and unique about that.
Yeah.
I don't know if such a place exists today, by the way. Like maybe, like if it does, it may be online somewhere. I don't think it exists in like.
So you think Silicon Valley is kind of dead?
I think it's not. It's at the time, like, so this again was 2007, 8 till 2013. There was no competition, right? Like New York didn't have as many companies. Like LA didn't have as many companies. So I think the rise of the rest of the world has been generally a good thing. But if you wanted to be in a startup, you had to go to Silicon Valley then.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I remember back in the day, like remember AOL, the
Yeah.
And Steve Case had his Rise of the Rest tour.
Mhm.
Remember that? And he would go around the country basically on this bus talking to second and third tier cities, which like probably were
Yeah.
New York back then,
Yeah.
but anywhere else besides Silicon Valley, trying to get people to do entrepreneurship. And now it's existing all over the place. I mean, you're here in Austin, and we had a portfolio company. Did you go to the dinner on Saturday?
No.
Okay. We had a portfolio company dinner with a bunch of our portcos, and I think there were like 8 of them in
Yeah.
town.
Wow.
Which is crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
2 of them are billion-dollar businesses, and they're here.
It's
Like, you would have
incredible.
never had
Yeah.
that on our come up.
When I started Teachable in New York in 2013, 2014, it was a weird thing to do. Like even at the time, we were questioned a lot. Like, why are you building this company in New York? And there actually was a general sense that you couldn't find experienced startup people in New York, because anyone with experience would be in San Francisco. Ironically, we had a good time recruiting then, because there's never a shortage of people in their 20s want to live in New York. So there was a
Yeah.
big exodus of people. But yeah, now it's everywhere.
You also sold your company during the stock market crash of 2020, right? What was that like?
So we ended up signing the deal to sell the company on the single biggest drop in market history. It was a Thursday when COVID was starting to be real. Then on Tuesday, we announced the deal, which then became the new biggest stock market crash in history. So it was a very confusing time, because on the one hand, we're like, man, like probably a great time to sell your business. Asset values are falling. But on the other hand, we saw our biggest sign up and revenue days at Teachable, because this was the opposite sort of trend where our business, like we sold the company at about 25 million in ARR, and we doubled to 50 million 3 months later.
Wow.
Which was our growth projection for the next like 12 plus months.
Then you could have had extra infinite money.
Correct. But again, like part of me was like, oh, I should have waited. And I was like, my internal dialogue is life has been so good to you. You've been so fortunate don't be the whiny rich asshole who's like, oh, if only I could have had more. Like, like net, I'm so grateful for everything I've gotten. So every time that voice comes, I'm like, shut up. Like,
I agree
life's
with
worked
that.
out pretty well.
Well, plus, I think it's cool to build something that's never existed before. So, like, Teachable was one of the really big learning platforms back in the day. Now there's a lot of them. That's awesome. There's open market. But this new thing at Carey doesn't really exist. So, thankfully, like, you had enough to keep going.
And with Teachable, I was passionate about one side of the business, but I was not passionate about the other side of the business. Like, I was always a very bad student. I didn't go to class. Like, even when it came to like online courses, I didn't take a ton of them. I liked the business of being a creator and that side of it, but I'm more passionate about the business I'm building this time around than the first time.
Really, tax code just gets you going.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge in a way that, like, again, in the Teachable business, I found it fascinating how creators make money and run their business, but I was always a terrible student. Like, I never went to class. Like, the idea of like I was not passionate about education quite the same way.
Would you tell a young kid today to go to college?
I think go to college as a great way to grow as an individual, as a person, potentially because it's fun. I wouldn't go there for the sole purpose of like maximizing my future income.
Yeah,
so I think what college is, it becomes a luxury good where if you can afford it, you have time, your parents have money, whatever, go do it, have fun, have an incredible time.
What about an MBA?
I almost never hire MBAs. And once in a while, if they do, it's despite their MBA.
I always say that we have to wash the MBA off you, even though I have one.
At the same time, again, look, if you're 27 years old, 28 years old, you've worked pretty hard as a banker, kind of want to chill for 2 years, you get into Stanford, Harvard, whatever, it's a pretty good life. You'll meet cool people, you'll hang out. Think of it as a mid-career vacation, sure. But if you fully go there to internalize how to be better at business, then that's a big red flag.
Yeah, huge waste of time. But I think it's useful for people to say stuff like that because Lord knows that's not how they're selling the stuff these days. And, I was listening to...
And now it costs what, like $100 and something thousand a year?
Yeah. I mean, back in my day, I was in finance. And so they paid for it. So that was sweet.
Yeah.
I'm like, I get to make whatever I made at the time. Plus you guys pay for my college. Awesome.
Oh, you also keep your salary?
I did a fucking great deal back in the day.
Wow.
This is one of my proudest deals, actually. I was working at State Street at the time, and they paid me. I was making, great money for me back then, a couple $100K a year, great. And then they paid for me to go to Georgetown for my MBA. And they had no clawback provision. So typically how it works is if they pay for your MBA, you got to stay for like 2 or 3 years.
Sounds like a terrible deal from their perspective.
Nailed it. I mean, they're so big. They're like, shut up, you tiny little analyst or whatever I was. But what's interesting is I'm actually going to see Dave Ramsey on Monday. And I was watching his old videos. And there was this video, Ankur, where somebody said, they're like, we're $1 million in debt. And he's like, oh, Lord, what'd you do for that? And then they said, we are $450,000 in student loan debt for two people that make $70,000 each a year.
MBAs or
advanced degrees in like policy or something. They work for the government. And I just think that is almost, of course, that is their decision. That wasn't a very good decision. But also, we've been so programmed that to me, that is a huge disservice to two people that like, they will never be able to get out from underneath that.
Yeah.
And they can't even get out of it with bankruptcy.
Yeah, I think there's so much programming of like, oh, you don't know what to do, go to school. It's never a bad idea. I think we need to undo a lot of that education.
Yeah, and that's why I think Teachable is so important and why what we do, I hope, is important for people. You know what else is weird? People hate online courses and people hate online education. Yeah. Like they equate it with like if you can't do, you teach, or that it's all scams. Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I also think when we haven't gotten there, but at some point, the way online education works, we're going to look back on what it is today and laugh. Because today, when you look at online education, it is really just a mishmash of old formats delivered, right? It's like, oh, we used to have videos, so let's take videos and we're basically doing the old paradigm now. And I don't have better ideas yet, but someone will, and we kind of need to rebuild education in a way that's digitally native.
Almost like a Duolingo advanced version, etc.
Or I'm sure it'll vary a lot by what's
your hottest ideas?
What you're learning. I mean, for me, what's always worked is just doing stuff. Like even in like, again, even in college, like, yes, I would eventually study because there was a test, but like, I only learned how to do anything, whether it's coding, building a business, like playing a sport, like really the majority of it comes from doing the thing.
That's so true. Yeah. So it almost has to be, I mean, that's the same when we think about our curriculum. It's you first, you learn to some level, but simultaneous with learning, you have check-ins that basically make sure you're learning the right thing at the right time. And then you have execution, which is like take little baby steps that can't ruin your life to start. And then you start taking more and more aggressive steps where by the end of the learning, you should have fully been done with the doing.
Yeah.
But we don't have any fancy tech on it yet. And I do feel like that's the future.
Yeah, I think like just getting people to, because online courses at Teachable, what we saw is like 50% of times people wouldn't open the thing.
I know.
When you charged more money, you actually got better results, ironically. A lot of people were more likely to take the course, more likely to report a happier satisfaction just by charging more. So that helps a little bit. But even then, people are their own worst enemy in a lot of ways and trying to find ways to beat that.
Yeah, I also think that's fascinating. Like people do not value the stuff that they do not pay for. Mm-hmm. That's another reason why we charge whatever we charge, because I just haven't found a way where people will actually do a thing that they do not pay for.
Yeah.
It almost becomes like cute to download and no desire to execute.
And we saw that repeatedly, which is why I mean, this was a while back, but every single year for many years, we looked at our most successful creators. The average price kept going up and up and up.
Interesting.
And what we found is most creators could double their price and see no change in conversion rate.
Whoa, that's wild.
Because the other side of that is people were always afraid of charging their worth, especially if they were new creators. They always felt like, why would anyone pay me for this? Like my information is not that valuable. Like, so they're all undercharged.
What would you say to somebody who was afraid to charge what they're worth?
I would tell them, even though this sounds crazy, double your price and work backwards. Let's say you double your price, there's no way it's worth that. Okay, what would you have to change to make it be worth that price? But you're just doubling it. Like that's just take that as a given and then work backwards.
That's really smart. What other hacks have you learned from building two companies that are arguably both worth 9 figures?
So one caveat I'll give is I felt very smart after running a company. The first time, I'm like, I've learned everything. When you do it a second time, you realize to get good at something, you have to do it hundreds of times. So while I feel good about our strategy now, it's just quite likely we'll make a second different set of mistakes.
Yeah.
But I think the lessons that have kind of stayed with me is one, the types of people we're hiring. The first time around, I focused a lot on pedigree, like what company you worked at, where you went to school. What I found is a lot of that stuff doesn't matter as much as you think it does. Like a lot of times you find someone from a very impressive sounding company, they haven't actually done the thing. Like Stripe or Google is not successful because of their contribution. They just stayed there at the right time in the right place. But finding someone who uniquely wants to be at a startup and wants that kind of challenge is been much better.
What do A players look like versus B or C players?
So the one caveat is I can do a lot of things to try and identify them, but I will get 1 out of every 4 hires wrong. And if you work with that constraint, you can be smart about it. So wherever possible, I love to have people contract or do something for a couple of months, because you can always tell after you start working with someone if they're going to be good. In fact, I almost never had someone who starts out great, who isn't always great, or someone who is a poor performer who you're like, oh, let me give them more time.
Dude, me neither. And I got killed on the internet for that. I got totally, I think the tweet was like the way it starts is the way it will be. If you start out as a bad performer, you will never be a good performer. And never is always a triggering word, but it's actually never. I've never once had somebody that started poorly that circled around. Never.
I've still like, which is why I don't think PIPs and performance improvement plans really truly work. And sometimes I think they do a disservice to both the employer and the employee. Yeah. But the takeaway for me is like, okay, if you can kind of test the waters, work with someone as a contractor before or something, that helps a lot.
Yeah. And like the other part, I think everybody gets mad when you think about poor performers versus not. But the other thing is just like fit versus not.
Yeah.
Because, we're kind of psychopaths. So like our businesses run really fast all the time.
That's a very important caveat. When we say poor performer, it doesn't mean this person will be a poor performer everywhere. It's just like there's probably a place out there that they will do great at, and you're kind of holding them back from finding that.
Yeah, 100%. What if somebody wants to be an A player? What do A players do?
Again, varies by the role, but to me, an A player is someone that I don't have to give initiative to. I don't have to tell them what to do. They're one step ahead of the game. They're always thinking of how to make the business better. And for a lot of roles, like I am learning from them, right? Like if like there's a lot of areas where I don't it's hard for me to identify the functional parts of why someone is an A player. I need them to actually tell me.
Yeah. Is there something that if somebody does this, you automatically go, not gonna make it?
I think when we find people that are just looking around, looking for what things to do, and they aren't really taking that initiative, that I think makes it very tough. The other thing, and this is my own bias, like there are some cultures that are measure twice, cut once.
Yeah.
I am the opposite. I'd rather have a frenetic pace of execution, even if you make more mistakes. Because for our kind of company, speed is one of the only advantages we have. So I index a lot in people who move really fast.
Yeah, me too. It seems like a common trait, actually.
It is. But I'll be careful to say like as an example, right? Like I think Apple is a phenomenal company, like one of the best of all times. Their culture is so different and it works, right? Like they're very secretive. They will potentially take many, many years to build something and build something beautifully. Figma did the same thing. They didn't release a product for 4 or 5 years. I couldn't do that. It's not my kind of company, but I want to caveat for the right type of founder, there's a way of, doing that.
That's a good
It's
point.
just not my style. My style is frenetic. We'll build in public. We'll fail in public. We'll launch bad things. The things we'll launch will eventually become better.
Yeah, same. Although, I mean, I've never built something as hard as a SaaS marketplace, like our marketplace in general. Like we're building BizScout right now. Fuck my life, that thing's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 3-sided marketplaces, which is what you build.
Yeah. But the thing with marketplaces, what we found is they take so long to scale.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of demoralizing and Teachable. It took us a few years to hit $1 million in annualized revenue. And we'd have creators come in, use our platform, make $1 million in like 2 months. We're like, what are we doing wrong? But once you get the flywheel going, it's just amazing and stays.
Yeah. I really understand why. But the cool part about marketplaces are those are moated in a world in which increasingly technology will not be moated.
Yeah.
So like somebody could go build the same duplicate of what
People
we
still
have.
use Craigslist, which is kind of crazy.
Oh yeah. And it doesn't have like the highest revenue per employee company out there is Craigslist or something.
Yeah, I think it's, by the way, I think that'll change. There'll be $1 billion company soon with one person and all of that. But for now, it's getting there.
Yeah, but I do think the cool part is like thinking in today's age, given technology and how fast it's moving, what are the areas where there's a human differential?
I think distribution is probably going to become more important than it already was.
Yeah.
Because if the cost of building something goes down to almost nothing, reaching people becomes the most valuable thing. The other thing that I think is a way of...
So you're going to start a YouTube channel?
Not yet, but I mean, distribution does matter.
Well, you guys have X that you're doing a ton on. Plus, you're starting courses yourself for people to learn.
Distribution makes a huge difference. The other competitive advantage we have, and no one thinks of it as a competitive advantage because the shittiest one of all is regulatory stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like we are a regulated organization. We're RIA. We're going to be a broker dealer. Even if AI makes it really easy to do stuff, the SEC is not going to approve people in 2 days. FINRA is not going to approve people in 2 days. So regulatory moats, I think, are real and will continue being real, even as everything else gets faster.
That's a great point. I mean, we think about where AI took over first. It was graphic design and copyright and all of that. Zero regulatory moat. Yeah. Whereas, why couldn't it take over accounting?
Yeah.
Regulation.
So even like I think the AI to help lawyers will be very good and exist for many more years before the AI that lets you replace a lawyer, because you're still going to want to have your lawyer when shit gets bad.
100%. And you want CYA. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I totally agree with that. What do you think, like when it comes to, we talk about them like mercenaries versus missionaries. So we love investing in second-time founders, of which you are, so that was sweet, and people who have lived the problem for a long time and felt their pain personally. You've invested in a ton of companies by now. Is that important to you too? Do people need to live their pain point or just like come up with a random idea, and who has a higher
I
likelihood of
think it's
success?
just so much easier. Like as an investor, if I see a company, I'm I'm less biased. Like I'm fine with either type. But if you were a friend telling me I want to start a company, how do I maximize my chances of even getting funded?
Yeah.
I would say solve your problem.
Yeah.
You already know who to build for. It's easier to find customers. Like, yes, you can build a successful company building vertical SaaS for construction workers, but it's going to be really hard because you're spending all your time trying to learn their problems. You skip so much stuff by building for yourself. So that's always my best advice.
Yeah.
In terms of patterns for founders, I've honestly seen a good mix of both. The part that surprised me is during bull markets, how little some founders have cared, which sounds kind of crazy. But like when I raised money, there's a sense of fiduciary responsibility in a way that the company may fail, but people are entrusting this on me. So even if things get really hard, I'm going to like internalize that pain and try and work through it. But we saw a lot of companies who raised money during good times. As soon as things get hard, they're shut down their business or, kind of just walk away from the fire.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a mutual friend. I'll tell you afterwards so he doesn't murder me because he's on the internet too, but who had a company and he forwarded me the email. He's like, can you believe this? I was like, yes, I can. Because the email was from a founder that raised a bunch of cash and then been like, you know what? My mental health is really struggling.
I
know exactly who I'm talking about.
I've seen that email.
And then like asks for like a couple month vacation to like,
they sent me like forwarded the text, like, what the hell is this?
Okay, we were on the same thing. But and listen, mental health is a real thing. But I think one of the reasons it's important to talk about all this is if you're going to do a startup, especially a venture-backed startup, expect massive mental pain. Just expect it. And if you don't want that, that's very healthy of you, quite honestly.
It's probably better. It's just that there's a sense of fiduciary responsibility and
do another business.
Like again, I don't want to kind of name them without one of the companies we both invested in is the opposite of that, where the founder did not have the easiest time fundraising in a very hot market. But now as a result, they're a stronger company and they're better for it than every single company that had a really easy time fundraising.
Yeah, it does. It definitely, that's the steel in the fire, I also liked what Brett Adcock said about Figure. Did you see his quote on, what did he say? He said, every company has two things. They have a speed, so magnitude, and direction vector problem. And if they get either one of those two wrong, magnitude or vector, they'll lose.
Interesting.
And
I've not seen that.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good quote. I mean, obviously a dude who reportedly, as we're supposed to say, has a $47 billion valuation, and getting to watch him sort of inside the back end a little bit. Talk about somebody who can handle massive pain. I can't think of a worse company to build than robotics. That's so hard. But kind of gets that speed matters and direction. And if you can hit those two things, you don't have to be that much smarter.
Yeah, I don't think raw intelligence is that helpful. Like if I think about what are the things, like when I'm looking at a founder, personally, the things I look for is, do they have what I call raw horsepower, but it doesn't have to be intelligence. It could be capacity for work or whatever, but do they have that?
Yeah.
Are they able to move really fast? And are they able to convince people to do things? The third thing is the thing you realize you spend most of your time trying to convince people to do things. You try to convince investors to give you money, convince customers to use your product, convince employees to join your team. So how convincing is someone? And I think that ends up being really, really important.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I mean, I think I remember Noah Kagan, who we were talking about before, a mutual friend of ours. He would say to me, like, you're the hardest working, person I know online or something. And I remember at first I was like, no, I'm not. No, I'm really smart. And, don't just say I work hard. But as I've gotten older, I realized that there is just a huge value to being willing to put the nose to the grindstone. And it's kind of gone a little bit out of favor, or at least it was for a few years. It was like, I love Gary Vee, but it would be like, Gary Vee, stop it. Like, get off with the hustle porn. And then I love that clip from Timothy Chalamet, what the fuck's his name?
Yeah.
Where he talks about just like, I want to be a great.
Yeah. We got very soft, I think, as a culture for a while. And it's funny because if an athlete says that, like everyone's like Kobe Bryant, well, like, yes, let's do it. But But yeah, as a founder or as an entrepreneur, we tend to expect the results without being willing to put in the work.
Yeah. Okay. I want to do a couple rapid fires with you. That made me think of something. One of the books I'm reading right now, I want to hear yours, is I've just read like every book I possibly can from Phil Jackson from his time leading the Lakers and the Bulls. I couldn't tell you a fucking thing about basketball, but the leadership components of it are astounding and how they had to like pair together the team. Plus, I didn't realize he was a Zen Buddhist the whole time, which is wild. You probably knew all this because you're a dude, but I don't know anything about that. So I'm reading that book. Is there anything right now that's like really inspiring you that you're reading?
I think the book that like got me started down this entire path, and I still periodically reread it, is Richard Branson's book.
Really?
And the reason, like, okay, the business is great and all of that, but there's this like spirit of him just having a fucking blast while doing this, which I find to be kind of healthy, right? Like, yes, he works really hard. He starts a lot of businesses, but he's doing it for the love of the game. And he's having a really good time doing it. So I find that part pretty cool. Ironically, I read a lot now, but I probably spend 70-80% of my time reading non-business books. Like, I just find reading enjoyable. And
like Fourth Wing? Are you a fantasy guy?
no, not fantasy. Like,
no, it's only for women. No werewolf smut for you. Copy.
Yeah,
okay.
but no. So like business books have their place. But
so what do you read then?
Lately, I've been reading a lot of Ishiguro, Japanese fiction. Like, but yeah, just I'll pick an author, I'll get into it, I'll read everything they've written. But yeah, I find it relaxing. It's my like nighttime like turn off work routine.
If you haven't read them, there's two books called Adventure Capitalist and Investment Biker. Have you read those?
Why does the name sound familiar?
Because it was Soros's partner back in the day, Jim Rogers, who was like, they had the best performing hedge fund for like some 5 or 10 year period. Then he just bails. He's like, I'm out.
Yeah.
He takes his money and he goes and rides a bike all through Russia.
Yeah.
And then
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and it convertible all through Africa and Latin America. Anyway, the point is,
go ahead.
No, it's just fun. He invests a ton while he's doing it, and adventures, which I think is a cool.
Yeah, it made me also realize when I read, I think it was called More Money Than God, which is about hedge funds, how much easier our lives are as a venture capitalist. Because when these hedge fund people make a mistake, they like take down the economy of Thailand. Like, like really bad things happen. Like, here, cool, you invest a company fails. Oh, your bet against the pound failed, but now 7 countries are in a depression and you've like thrown off the entire global economy because you took a levered $43 billion bet that you got wrong. So
yeah, it is. It's a little bit of a zero-sum game, which I never like, because entrepreneurship doesn't have to be. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I saw somewhere that like the global, what was the tweet? It was like, the world is like $417 trillion in debt. It was like, who are we in debt to? Like the emoticons or something? That were like Decepticons?
The global financial crisis where like Iceland like levered up 40 times and just blew it all. It was just, it's like countries drunk at the casino.
Yeah. But I do think one of the good parts is like to wrap it up, and I'd love to end with this last question, is like, at the end of the day, we can focus so much on all the high level things that are happening in the world, totally out of our control, who's in power, who's not, whatever. Or we can just build something. So if there's a builder out there needing a little inspiration, what would you tell them?
There's nothing like actually going out and doing it. Like, the amount of people I've spoken to that are like constantly stuck in the analysis paralysis stage of like trying to find the perfect idea, find the perfect brand name, trying to find, the perfect logo, versus just going out there, putting yourself out there, asking someone for money and doing the thing. Like that's really what it comes down to.
Carrie, and what's your handle on Twitter and Instagram so everybody can slide into?
My full name, Ankur Nagpal, on Twitter, on Instagram, AnkurNA, and Carrie.com, which was worth a lot of money.
So they're all just going to slide into your DMs, both women, now that they know that you're single, you're welcome. And also people asking for money.
Perfect. Sounds great.
You got all kind of gold diggers in the mix. Ankur, thanks for being here. You're the man.
Thanks for having me.
And now let's hear from Ankur on his postcard.
Even though it may seem like it at the time, there's no amount of time that you will spend with your parents that you will ever regret when you get older.
Oh, now I'm crying. That's so lovely. You're the man. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.